Chapter 7:16. At the summit of Cliff Mountain. Yi Xian sat in the main hall while Shangguan and Jiang Jiao stood quietly in front of him. Shangguan said, "The summit of Cliff Mountain is located in the extreme south. This mountain is tens of thousands of zhang high. Standing on the summit is like standing in the starry sky. There used to be a super sect called Sword Sect." Sword Sect. Yi Xian was stunned. Sword Sect? Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Shangguan was about to speak when Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Sword Sect? Are you sure?" Shangguan nodded. "Why?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Our black-yellow great world also has a sword sect. Don't tell me you don't know about it?" Shangguan nodded. "I know, but it might be the same name." Same name. Yi Xian shook his head. He'd already seen a few sword sect members, and there was definitely some sort of connection between them. The executing heaven sword was obtained from one of the sword sect. Yi Xian said, "Tell me about this sword sect." Shangguan nodded. This sword sect appeared a bit early. At that time, there was no Xianyuan clan and Wu clan. After the sword sect disappeared, Xianyuan clan and Wu clan appeared. Yi Xian frowned. This sword sect existed before them? Shangguan nodded. Yes, this sword sect is an ancient force. As for why they disappeared, no one knows. However, it is said that the Xianyuan clan obtained the divine sword from the sword sect. Sword sect. Yi Xian said, "This time, the Xianyuan clan must be among the forces that want to deal with me. There must be a reason why they chose the peak of the cliff mountain." Shangguan nodded. "There must be a reason, but we can't find anything. How many people are there against us? Who are they?" "We." Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's not your fault. We've just arrived here and our foundation is weak. We can't compare to these veteran forces." Shangguan nodded. "We will work hard." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll make a trip to the bound of universe. That woman should know more." As he spoke, he looked at the two women. "I'll leave the northern region to you." After saying that, he disappeared. In the same place, Shangguan whispered, "Ninth young lady, I'm a little flustered." Jiang Jiao was silent. She was also a little panicked. This time, would Yi Xian be able to survive? After leaving the northern region, Yi Xian headed straight for the Xianhuang world. At the entrance of the Xianhuang palace, Elder Yang stood in front of Yi Xian and said, "Emperor Yi, His Majesty is temporarily unable to receive guests. Please forgive him." Yi Xian glanced at the hall. "When can she receive guests?" Elder Yang said, 3 days later." Yi Xian looked at Elder Yang. 3 days later? Elder Yang nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Is she deliberately avoiding me?" Elder Yang did not speak. Yi Xian nodded. "I won't force it. Goodbye." With that, he turned and left. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the hall. "Young Master Yi." It was the voice of the Xianhuang Lord. Yi Xian turned around. At this moment, the Xianhuang Lord walked out. She walked in front of Yi Xian and smiled slightly. "Young Master Yi, are you here for the matter of the summit of Cliff Mountain?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to ask the Xianhuang Lord." The Xianhuang Lord was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You can't say?" The Xianhuang Lord said softly, "I'm afraid they are determined to win this time." Determined to win. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I want to know who they are." The Xianhuang Lord looked at Yi Xian. "The Xianyuan family, the Wu clan, the Tianmen, and the Jinwu school. These 4 are known to me." "Already known." Yi Xian smiled and said, "What about the unknown?" The Xianhuang Lord shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian asked again, "Are they targeting me or the plain-dressed woman?" The Xianhuang Lord looked at Yi Xian. "Is there a difference?" "If they are targeting you, it means that they have a way to deal with the plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian was silent. The Xianhuang Lord said softly, actually, you can escape. Escape? Yi Xian looked at the Xianhuang Lord and smiled. How? The Xianhuang Lord looked at Yi Xian. If you escape, I believe that even they will not be able to find you easily. However, you have to give up everyone in the northern region. Give up everyone in the northern region. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Is there any other way? The Xianhuang Lord smiled. Only when people are alive can they have unlimited possibilities. Young Master Yi is a genius. If you live for a few more decades, you will be invincible in the Xianhuang Great World. You might even have a wider stage. Why would you need to fight them to the death? Yi Xian spread his hands and smiled. Actually, I also want to escape. However, if I escape, do you think they will let the northern region go? The Xianhuang Lord smiled. They are all unimportant people. Why do you care so much about them? Yi Xian looked at the Xianhuang Lord. They are my friends and my followers. The Xianhuang Lord looked at Yi Xian for a long time. In the end, she nodded. Then I wish young Master Yi good luck. No, I should say, I hope that the person behind young Master Yi is strong enough. After saying that, she turned to leave. However, she soon stopped. Young Master Yi, the peak of this cliff mountain was the place where the Xianyuan family's ancestor comprehended the Tao. The Xianyuan family's divine sword is here. They must have chosen this place for a reason. Young Master Yi, be careful. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you for the reminder. I will remember this favor. After saying that, he turned to leave. As he watched Yi Xian leave, Elder Yang asked softly, Your Majesty, what are his chances of winning? If he is alone, he has no chance of winning. The Xianhuang Lord said. What if the woman in the plain dress is included? The Xianhuang Lord said softly, if the woman is in the unknown realm, she might have a chance of survival. If she is not, she will definitely die. Hearing that, Elder Yang's expression turned serious. Why? The Xianhuang Lord's expression gradually turned serious. The peak of the cliff mountain. That place is not simple. Elder Yang wanted to ask more, but the Xianhuang Lord had already walked into the main hall. Elder Yang fell silent. Inside the main hall, the Xianhuang Lord came to a portrait of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man in the portrait wore a light green robe. His hands were behind his back as he looked forward. The founder of the Xianhuang realm, Li Xuani. This name once belonged to an era. During that era, this person suppressed all the major forces in the Xianhuang realm and founded the Xianhuang realm single-handedly. That was the Xianhuang realm's most glorious time. Now, the Xianhuang realm was almost forgotten by the world. The title of Xianhuang Lord was actually a joke. Because the people outside did not recognize it. The reason why the Xianhuang realm still existed was because of the person in the portrait. Although Li Xuani had disappeared for many years, no force dared to underestimate him. Because back then, he was known as the person most likely to surpass the unknown realm. If such a person left a wisp of his soul in the Xianhuang realm, whoever wanted to destroy the Xianhuang realm would have to bear his wrath. When the Xianhuang realm was weak, they voluntarily gave up on controlling the territories outside. Therefore, no force dared to fight them to the death. Everyone was afraid of Li Xuani. The Xianhuang Lord looked at the portrait for a long time before she suddenly chuckled. Ancestor, the Xianhuang realm will not decline. It definitely won't. As soon as she finished speaking, she walked to the portrait. She opened her palm and a flying dagger landed in it. The flying dagger was missing a corner. The Xianhuang Lord looked at the flying dagger in her hand and smiled. Everyone says that the Xianyuan clan's divine sword is the sharpest. Actually, who would know that the sharpest divine weapon in the Xianhuang realm is you? As she said that, she seemed to think of something and her smile gradually disappeared. You have now met an opponent. The sharpness of that sword is probably not inferior to yours. At that moment, the flying dagger suddenly trembled and a ray of light flashed across the blade. The Xianhuang lord smiled. "I'll let you two have a spar some other day." After saying that, she turned and left. After Yi Xian returned to the northern region, he locked himself in his room. In the prison pagoda, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him were 3 divine state swords. Breaking through to the Tao realm, Yi Xian picked up a divine state sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Qi! A wave of pure energy immediately spread out from his body. Soon, Yi Xian's entire body began to tremble. Boom! Powerful auras began to vibrate from Yi Xian's body. The surrounding space began to ripple, but it quickly returned to normal. This time, Yi Xian sped up his absorption because he did not have much time left. He was now in the creation realm, so he had to reach the Tao realm. Every time he advanced a realm, it was a huge improvement to his current strength. This time, it would be fine if the plain-dressed woman appeared on his trip to the cliff mountain. However, if she did not appear, he would have to rely on himself. He could not place all his hopes on the plain-dressed woman, because he was not 100% sure that the plain-dressed woman would appear. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. On the second day, he had already devoured all 3 divine swords. If it was not for the fact that his physical body was strong enough, he might have played himself to death. Because the energy of the 3 divine swords was too strong. Absorbed crazily. Late at night the next day, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. As soon as he stood up, a powerful aura suddenly surged out of his body. He opened his eyes, and 2 beams of sword light shot out of them. At this time, a smear of blood slowly flowed out from his mouth. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled bitterly. This time, although he had forcefully broken through to the Tao realm, he was still too anxious. This anxiety caused quite a bit of damage to his internal organs. But fortunately, he had a divine state physical body, so the damage was not too serious. If it was not for the fact that his physical body was strong enough, he might have really played himself until he was crippled. Collecting his thoughts, Yi Xian left the prison pagoda. At this moment, it was already late at night. In the night sky, a bright moon hung in the sky. Yi Xian smiled slightly, and then he transformed into a ray of sword light that shot into the sky. But he quickly stopped. Not far in front of him stood 3 people. An Lanxiu, Mo Xia, and Lian Wanli, who was holding a large blade. Mo Xia looked at Yi Xian and smiled slightly. "You have to bring us along." Yi Xian said softly, "We will die." Mo Xia said, "We are friends." As he spoke, he walked in front of Yi Xian and said softly, "I will go with you and risk my life." Chapter 717. Friends. What was called a true friend? It was the person who stood up for you when you were in the most difficult and dangerous situation. Adversity reveals a man's heart. Looking at Mo Xia and the other 2, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. On the road ahead, he was not alone. He, Yi Xian, had countless enemies in his life, but he also had his own brothers and beauties. Yi Xian looked at the 3 and smiled. "I'll go." Mo Xia shook his head. "I can help." As his voice faded, he opened his palm and a powerful force vibrated out from his palm. Deity realm. Yi Xian was a little surprised. He didn't think that Mo Xia actually reached the deity realm. As if thinking of something, he quickly looked at An Lanxiu and Lian Wanli. The 2 of them also reached the deity realm. Deity realm. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Lian Wanli suddenly said, "Deity realm pill." Deity realm pill. Yi Xian understood. The talent of the 3 people in front of him was not inferior to him at all, maybe even above him. What these 3 people lacked were opportunities and resources. Many times, Yi Xian thought that if the world prison pagoda was with these 3 people, perhaps they would be more outstanding than him. In this world, many people were really outstanding and worked hard enough. However, in this world, many times, hard work was not enough. 90% effort, 10% opportunity. But if he didn't have that opportunity, all his efforts would be in vain. Hard work. Yi Xian tightly grasped the sword in his hand. There were too many outstanding people in this world. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked at the three people in front of him. Let me go alone this time. He was very clear what he was going to face. The three people in front of him were all very strong. Although they were only at the deity realm, they could definitely fight with a half-step sealed realm expert. However, what he was going to face now was definitely not a half-step sealed realm, but a sealed realm expert, or even higher. Mo Xia and the other two would only be sacrificing for nothing. Mo Xia shook his head. We've already decided, there's no need to say any more. Yi Xian shook his head. It's meaningless. Mo Xia looked at Yi Xian. For us, there is. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Enlancio walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. We'll face it together. Lian Wanli also nodded slightly. You can't be the only one to shoulder everything. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Mo Xia looked up at the horizon. At the end of the horizon, the sky was already turning white. It's daybreak. Let's go. Yi Xian looked at the three people in front of him. Do you really want to go together? Lian Wanli said unhappily, can you stop being so wishy-washy? Let's go. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, then let's go. With that, the four of them disappeared into the horizon. After the four of them left, Shengguan Xian, and Jiang Jiu walked over. Shengguan Xian, looked at the horizon and said softly, they will come back, right? Jiang Jiu nodded. They will. They definitely will. At the end of the distant horizon, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. Beside him were Mo Xia and the other two. Yi Xian's eyes were closed. No one knew what he was thinking. Mo Xia's right hand was clenched tightly in front of his chest. His left hand was holding an ancient book, and he was reading it with great interest. At this moment, Lian Wanli looked at Yi Xian. Do you know who our opponents are? Yi Xian said, Xian Yuan family, Wu clan, Sword Martial Gate, and that Elysium. This is what we know, and there are still some that we don't know. Lian Wanli said softly, there are still some that we don't know? Yi Xian nodded. Lian Wanli asked again, what are our chances of winning? Yi Xian said, I don't know. Lian Wanli nodded and didn't ask anything else. At this moment, Yi Xian looked up at the horizon and said softly, we can't care so much anymore. Let's just fight them. Mo Xia smiled. That's true. We have no way out. Let's just fight. Yi Xian laughed. Let's fight them. As soon as he said that, the four of them sped up. In the Bound of Universe, the Master of Universe sat on the stone steps in front of the Bound of Universe palace. A man in black was kneeling in front of her. The Master of Universe said softly, just the four of them? The man in black nodded. Only four. The Master of Universe was silent for a moment, then asked softly, are you sure? The man in black said, I'm sure. The Master of Mysterious Yellow smiled. This is going to be interesting. As she said that, she seemed to have thought of something and asked, is there any movement from the Taoist gate? The man in black shook his head. I don't know. Our people can't get in at all. The Master of Universe stood up. Let's go. Let's see how this ends. After saying that, she walked into the distance. Behind her, 5 men in black suddenly appeared. All 5 of them were in the Ascending Foam realm. On the way, someone asked, Your Majesty, are you going to make a move? The Master of Universe grinned. That depends. The voice spoke in a low voice, this isn't a simple matter. The slightest mistake will cause us to be doomed. The Master of Universe spoke softly, I hope they fight more ferociously. The Taoist Gate. Abu stood on the city wall and looked into the sky. Elder Mu was by his side. Elder Mu spoke in a low voice, Are those clans really going to fight to the death with Yi Xian? Abu smiled, what else? Not to mention them, even we are tempted by that treasure. Elder Mu gazed at Abu, Elder. Abu grinned, don't worry, we won't make a move against him. Strictly speaking, that kid is on our side. Moreover, we need time right now, and he just happens to be able to buy some time for us. Elder Mu spoke in a low voice. What are his chances of winning? Abu shook his head, that depends on the woman's strength. If she's strong, then he might have a chance at survival. The woman in a plain dress. Elder Mu had a slightly complicated expression on his face. She's truly mysterious. Abu nodded, indeed. However, we should be able to find out her true strength once she makes an appearance. As he spoke, he looked up into the sky. Let's go. Let's go have a look. Let's see what the outcome will be today. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Elder Mu vanished along with him. The Sword Force Sect. The Sword Force Hall. The Sword Force Hall was the most sacred place in the Sword Force sect because it was where the founding ancestor resided all those years ago. The hall was extremely huge, and there was only a single statue in the entire hall. It was a white-robed woman with a wine gourd hanging on her waist, and she seemed extremely heroic. It was the founding ancestor of the Sword Force sect. She was invincible in the Sky-Earth world all those years ago. Her fists were peerless. However, most people had only seen her use her fists, and very few had seen her use her sword. So, her attainments in the sword Dao had always been a mystery. However, her fists were sufficient to dominate that era. Meanwhile, the door to the hall was suddenly opened, and then an old man walked in. The old man wore a black robe and had a head full of white hair. He seemed quite old, but his eyes were bright and piercing like a blade. He was the previous sect master of the Sword Force sect, Qin Biyao. If this name had been spoken 1,000 years ago, then it would have been known to all. Qin Biyao walked over to the statue and bowed respectfully, founding ancestor. This battle is related to the rise and fall of my Sword Force sect. I hope founding ancestor will protect my Sword Force sect. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and then a pitch-black box flew into his hand from behind the statue. Qin Biyao put the box away, bowed once more, and then turned around and left. The statue behind him gazed ahead with an indifferent expression. The Xianyuan clan. On this day, a hunchbacked old man walked into the hall. The old man's back was very hunched, and it made him seem very short. A black sheathed sword hung from his waist. He was the previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. However, he'd lived for too long. It was so long that even many people within the Xianyuan clan didn't know which patriarch he was. They only knew that there was such a person in the clan. The hunchbacked old man walked in front of a statue. The statue in front of him was that of the Xianyuan clan's old ancestor, Xianyuan Shi. The reason why the Xianyuan clan had risen so powerfully in the past was because of this man. One man and one sword had risen powerfully in the mysterious yellow great world. The hunchbacked old man bowed deeply towards the statue. Then, he opened his palm, and the sword hanging from the statue's waist suddenly turned into a golden sword light and flew into his palm. The hunchbacked old man put away the sword, turned around, and left. Somewhere in the clouds, a white-clothed old man stood quietly. Beside him stood a black-clothed old man. If Yi Xian were here, he would be able to recognize these two people. These two people were the ones who had taken Yi Ling away. The Divine Temple. The white-clothed old man was expressionless. Just the four of them? The black-clothed old man nodded. Just the four of them. The white-clothed old man asked, "Where is the little girl from the Sword Force sect now?" The black-clothed old man hesitated for a moment, and then said, "I don't know." The white-clothed old man frowned. "I don't know?" The black-clothed old man nodded. "That little girl was extraordinarily swift, and we weren't able to catch up to her at all. Moreover, we didn't dare to get too close." The white-clothed old man fell silent for a short moment before he said, "Forget it. It's just a clone, so there's no need to pay attention to her." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and looked towards the distance. A mountain stood towering amidst the clouds in the distance. The peak of Precipice Mountain. Moreover, there was a stone sword hanging upside down at the peak of Precipice Mountain. The white-clothed old man spoke in a light voice. An extraordinary power resided there all those years ago. The black-clothed old man asked, "The sword sect?" The white-clothed old man nodded, "The sword sect. It's very strong." The black-clothed old man spoke in a low voice, "Revered ambassador, you seem to know that sect very well." The white-clothed old man nodded, "Only the oldest group of people know how terrifying that sect is. All those years ago, when the sword sect revealed its sword, would anyone dare to go against it?" The black-clothed old man said, "What's the relationship between the Xinyuan clan and the sword sect?" The white-clothed old man laughed with ridicule. He was just lucky and obtained a fortuitous encounter. When he spoke up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his brows knit together slightly. "However, that sword is quite special." "A divine sword?" asked the black-clothed old man. The white-clothed old man nodded, "That sword will probably have a miraculous effect at the peak of Precipice Mountain." When he spoke up to this point, he suddenly looked down and said, "They're here." Not too far away, a man was flying over on a sword, and there were another man and 2 women by his side. It was Yi Xian's group of 4. P.S. Please watch the original. Otherwise, I'm going to dive into the sea. I'm not joking. Chapter 7:18. At the peak of Precipice Mountain. Yi Xian's group of 4 arrived at the foot of Precipice Mountain. They couldn't see the peak of Precipice Mountain from where they stood because it was too high. They were already above the clouds. The sword sect. Yi Xian raised his head and looked towards the peak. He was slightly curious about the sword sect on Precipice Mountain. Is the sword sect related to the sword sect in the Chaos verse? After a short moment, Yi Xian spoke softly, "Let's go up." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky. And Lanxiao and the others followed behind Yi Xian. Before long, Yi Xian's group of 4 arrived at the peak of Precipice Mountain. The peak of Precipice Mountain was coiled by clouds and mist, and it seemed like an immortal paradise. Yi Xian walked towards the distance, and damaged swords could be seen everywhere on both sides of his path. There was a black palace 300 m away from him, and a stone sword floated in the air above the palace. Before long, Yi Xian's group of 4 arrived before the palace. There were 2 large black words inscribed above the palace's stone door, "Sword Sect." The Sword Sect. Yi Xian looked through the door and saw a statue standing towering before the palace. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the statue. He recognized it. It was the statue of the man in green clothes. It's him again. He really is related to the sword sect in the Chaos verse. Yi Xian sped up and walked over to the statue. The man looked ahead, and there was a white little fellow sitting on his shoulder. He knew this little fellow as well. It was the little fellow that had come to help Xiaoling that day. This little fellow was on the same side as the man in green clothes. Yi Xian's gaze descended onto the man in green clothes, and his heart was filled with curiosity. Why do so many sword sects have statues of this man? What was the identity of this azure-robed man? Meanwhile, Xiaoling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and she pointed at the little fellow on the man's shoulder. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's her." Xiaoling curiously looked at the little guy, then looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "We will have the opportunity to meet in the future." Xiaoling nodded and returned to the prison pagoda. Yi Xian looked at the sword at the waist of the green-robed man. He was also familiar with this sword. It was the sword at the top of the pagoda. It was obvious that this azure-clothed man was one of the people who had heavily injured the world prison pagoda. Yi Xian went silent for a short moment before he walked towards the hall. In next to no time, he and Lanxiao and the others arrived within the hall, but the hall was completely empty. However, the hall was very clean. It was obvious that someone had cleaned it frequently. Yi Xian smiled and said, "What? Still not coming out?" As soon as he finished speaking, 4 people suddenly appeared in front of him. The one in the lead was a hunchbacked old man. The old man held a golden sword in his hand, and he looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression in his eyes. Beside the hunchbacked old man stood a black-robed old man. This person was the sword martial sect's ancestor, Qin Biejiang. Qin Biejiang's gaze had always been on the sword at Yi Xian's waist. And beside Qin Biejiang stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was tall and sturdy, and his face was densely covered in all sorts of mysterious talisman markings, causing him to look rather horrifying. The Wu clan. The person before them was the current patriarch of the Wu clan, Fu Yu. On Fu Yu's right stood a black-robed man. The black-robed man wore a bamboo hat on his head, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. This person was the sect master of the Heavenly Gate. No one knew his true identity, nor did anyone know his name. Yi Xian looked at the sect master of the Heavenly Gate and said with a smile, "When I came, you said that we would mind our own business." The sect master of the Heavenly Gate said in a hoarse voice, "That was then, and this is now." Yi Xian laughed heartily, "That was then, and this is now." After saying that, he looked at the 4 people. "What, do you want to have a chat with me?" The hunchbacked old man of the Xian Yuan family looked at Yi Xian. "Young man, you are a smart person. You should understand what's best for you." Yi Xian said with a smile, "You are also smart people. As far as I know, there is a deity Templar behind you, right?" The hunchbacked old man slightly narrowed his eyes. "You know quite a lot." Yi Xian said with a smile, "What I don't understand is, if you kill me, who will get the 5th dimensional treasure? Will it be the 4 of you, or the deity Templar behind you?" The hunchbacked old man shook his head. "At this time, don't play such petty tricks. As for how to divide it, we will discuss it." After saying that, he looked at Yi Xian. "You have 2 choices. First, call out the person behind you and fight to the death with us. Second, hand over the 5th dimensional treasure and the sword martial sect's divine sword." Yi Xian said with a smile, "After I hand it over, will you let me go?" The hunchbacked old man looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian looked at the 4 people and said with a smile, "Actually, no matter what, you won't let me live, right?" The hunchbacked old man nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian spread his hands. "Then what is there to talk about? Fight? Fight." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the hunchbacked old man looked at Yi Xian and just looked at him. He didn't fight. He wasn't afraid of Yi Xian, but he was afraid of the person behind Yi Xian. The woman in a plain dress behind Yi Xian was too mysterious. So mysterious that they couldn't help but be afraid. If it weren't for the 5th dimensional treasure being too tempting, they wouldn't be willing to become enemies with such a powerhouse. At this time, the ancestor of the sword martial sect, Qin Biejiang, suddenly said, "What are you hesitating for?" Hearing this, the hunchbacked old man slightly nodded and waved his right hand. Bang! The entire sword sect hall suddenly collapsed. After the sword sect hall collapsed, 4 beams of light suddenly appeared around Yi Xian's group of 4. Sword beams. 4 sword beams soared into the sky, piercing through the clouds. Following the appearance of these 4 sword beams, a sword chi wall directly appeared around Yi Xian's group. Sword array. Yi Xian smiled. "To deal with the 4 of us, you need to make such a big scene?" The hunchbacked old man was expressionless. "If I'm not mistaken, your people should be nearby, right?" Yi Xian looked at the hunchbacked old man. "Guess." The hunchbacked old man didn't waste any words and suddenly swung his palm forward. With a wave of this palm, the surrounding space was directly shattered. At the moment the hunchbacked old man made his move, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A sword beam slashed down, tearing everything apart. Bang! An explosion resounded abruptly. In the next moment, Yi Xian's figure was blasted flying, and his figure smashed against the sword chi wall. Bang! The entire sword chi wall shook violently, and then Yi Xian's figure smashed against the ground. After the hunchbacked old man blasted Yi Xian flying, he didn't attack again, and he just turned around to glance at the surroundings. All three of them had rather vigilant expressions on their faces. This time, their objective really wasn't Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a monstrous genius indeed, and he was an extremely monstrous genius. However, Yi Xian was still too young, and he wasn't a threat to them. What they were truly afraid of was the woman in a plain dress who stood behind Yi Xian. Even though they'd prepared themselves, they still didn't dare underestimate an expert of such a level in the slightest. However, there was no movement in the surroundings. The hunchbacked old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he turned around to gaze at Yi Xian who stood nearby. "Aren't you going to call your people over?" Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he suddenly vanished. A sword howl suddenly resounded. The boundless sword. At the instant that Yi Xian vanished, the hunchbacked old man's pupils constricted slightly, and then he pressed his palms together. This time, a ray of sword light was pressed together. However, the tip of a sword had still pierced half an inch into the center of his forehead. Fresh blood sprayed out. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's furious howl suddenly resounded. "Soul Subduer." As soon as his voice resounded, a mysterious force enveloped the hunchbacked old man. Soul Subduer. At the moment that he was enveloped by this mysterious force, the hunchbacked old man's expression instantly changed violently, and he suddenly roared furiously. Bang! Yi Xian was blasted flying along with his sword. However, it wasn't long before Enlancio suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian, and then she placed her palm against Yi Xian's back. Bang! Yi Xian had stopped moving, but Enlancio had retreated explosively by over 100 m again. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the hunchbacked old man. At this moment, the old man's body was trembling violently while a mysterious force was ceaselessly breaking down the old man's soul. At the same time, fresh blood was seeping out from the center of the hunchbacked old man's forehead. Right at this moment, the hunchbacked old man suddenly placed his palm against his chest. Subduer. As soon as his voice resounded. Bang! A formidable aura suddenly surged out from within him. After a short moment, the old man's body gradually returned to normal. Yi Xian's face fell when he witnessed this scene. I've failed. Even the boundless sword and soul subduer's sword hadn't been able to instantly annihilate the hunchbacked old man. Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed. It's because my cultivation is too low. I'm utterly unable to bring forth the full might of the boundless sword. At this moment, the hunchbacked old man and the others had extremely solemn expressions. Especially the hunchbacked old man. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian because he'd almost been killed by Yi Xian in that instant just now. Would anyone dare to believe this? In the beginning, even though he knew that Yi Xian was extremely monstrous, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would be able to pose a threat to him. Because the gap between him and Yi Xian was too huge. It was so huge that external forces couldn't make up for it at all. Even if Yi Xian utilized the pagoda of prison, he was confident in his ability to resist it. However, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would almost end his life with a single strike of his sword. A single strike. The hunchbacked old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. I really severely underestimated you. Yi Xian grinned. Is that so? The hunchbacked old man walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian, needless to say, you're extremely monstrous indeed. As soon as he finished speaking, he'd placed his right hand on the golden sword at his waist. Meanwhile, Enlancio stood in front of Yi Xian. She opened her palm, and a spear appeared in her hand. The hunchbacked old man gazed at Enlancio before he suddenly vanished. Enlancio took a step forward, and the spear in her hand stabbed out like a lightning dragon. The hunchbacked old man didn't draw his sword, and he smashed his fist forward instead. Bang! Enlancio retreated explosively. The hunchbacked old man didn't pursue Enlancio, and he charged towards Yi Xian instead. Just as Mo Xia and Lian Wanli were about to take action, several powerful auras enveloped the two of them. On the other side, the hunchbacked old man had arrived before Yi Xian. As he gazed at Yi Xian, the hunchbacked old man revealed a savage smile. Yi Xian, do you know what sword this is? It's the leader of swords. The leader of all swords in the world. As soon as this sword is drawn, all swords submit. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly drew his sword. A golden sword light shot into the sky. As soon as this sword was drawn, all swords in the world submit. However, the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand wasn't convinced. Chapter 719. The head of a sword. What was the head of a sword? It was the head of all the swords in the world. Needless to say, Yi Xian instantly sensed a strand of powerful sword intent when the old man drew the golden sword. It was the sword intent of the sword itself. However, the executing heaven sword refused to accept it. The executing heaven sword. The sharpest sword in the universe all those years ago. Perhaps it wasn't the strongest sword, but it was definitely the sharpest. At this moment, a strand of monstrous sword intent erupted from the executing heaven sword as well. It was the battle intent of the sword itself. Yi Xian seized the opportunity to draw his sword and slash. A sword howl shook the sky. Bang! As soon as their swords collided, an expanse of light suddenly erupted in front of them. In an instant, the space in an area of almost 30 kilometers was shattered into pieces. But it didn't take long for the space in the surroundings to return to normal. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had retreated to the wall of sword energy once more, and a wisp of blood was seeping out from the corner of his mouth. The hunchbacked old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. The swords in their hands were trembling violently. A moment of silence ensued before their swords suddenly struggled free from their grasp and slashed forward. Bang! An expanse of light erupted once more. In next to no time, the two swords were slashing madly at each other above their heads. The head of a sword. The executing heaven sword. Both swords were extremely furious. Especially the executing heaven sword. Yi Xian had never felt such rage from the executing heaven sword. It was fighting with its life on the line. Everyone was looking at the two swords as well. Needless to say, both of them were divine swords of this era. This time, they were clearly fighting for the first position. The hunchbacked old man gazed at the head of a sword, and then he waved his right hand with the intention of summoning it back. However, the head of a sword paid no attention to him. The hunchbacked old man's face fell. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, executing heaven sword. Slash it to death. Slash it to death. The executing heaven sword instantly howled when it received Yi Xian's encouragement, and then rays of light shot towards the head of a sword. The hunchbacked old man paid no attention to the head of a sword, and he gazed at Yi Xian. Since the person behind you refuses to come out, then die. Let's attack together. As soon as they finished speaking, the four of them were about to attack. As for Enlancio and the other two at Yi Xian's side, they directly rushed out. Could he beat it? There was no way he could beat them. Because the difference in their realms was too great. But they wanted to fight. This time, they had already prepared for the worst. Boom boom boom. The three of them had just charged out when they were directly blasted flying, whereas the hunchbacked old man's group of three didn't pay any attention to Enlancio and the others, and they directly charged towards Yi Xian. Kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian was their biggest threat. Yi Xian revealed a savage smile when he saw the four of them charge at him, and then he roared furiously. In the next moment, an illusory Shao toss suddenly appeared between his brows. Prison Pagoda. Boom! A powerful pressure directly enveloped the hunchbacked old man and the other three, and their speed also slowed down at this moment. Looking at the world prison pagoda between Yi Xian's brows, the expressions of the four turned somewhat sinister. They naturally wouldn't be frightened by Yi Xian. The four of them sped up, and their formidable auras swept towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to activate the world prison pagoda when the four of them suddenly stopped, and then they immediately turned around while an extremely formidable aura swept over. Their expressions changed, and they attacked in unison. Rumble. Along with the sound of an explosion, the four of them were blasted back repeatedly, and they retreated for an entire 3 kilometers. Yi Xian and the others were stunned. They looked towards the distance, and they saw a woman walking over slowly. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw her. In the next moment, he flew over to the woman and embraced her. "Big sister, you're finally here." It was Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai that he hadn't seen for a very long time. The former #1 genius of the god race. Being hugged by Yi Xian, Jian Zizai was slightly stunned. In the next moment, a force directly shook Yi Xian away. She looked at Yi Xian. "Big sister?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "Aren't you my big sister?" Jian Zizai. At this moment, Yi Xian walked in front of Jian Zizai with a bitter expression. "Big sister, you're finally here." "I'm so miserable." Jian Zizai. He had contacted Jian Zizai a long time ago, but the other party had never responded to him. This time, he didn't expect her to actually come back. She's back. For the first time, Yi Xian felt that Jian Zizai was very kind. Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. "Not bad, not bad. Your aura is actually so strong. It seems that ordinary people at the half-step ascension stage are no match for you." Yi Xian said in a deep voice. "They're bullying the weak." Bullying the weak. Jian Zizai looked at the hunchbacked old man and the others not far away. She looked at the four of them. Extreme ascension stage. Extreme ascension stage. The hunchbacked old man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Who are you?" Jian Zizai smiled slightly. "Jian Zizai." The hunchbacked old man frowned slightly. "Never heard of you." Jian Zizai suddenly disappeared. Bang! The hunchbacked old man's entire body flew thousands of feet away. When he stopped, there was a red palm print on the right side of his face. Jian Zizai looked at the hunchbacked old man. "Have you heard of me now?" The hunchbacked old man looked at Jian Zizai. He was not angry, there was only solemnity in his eyes. "You. Half-step unknown." Half-step unknown? Jian Zizai's lips curled up slightly. "Guess." The hunchbacked old man stared at Jian Zizai. "Who are you to Yi Xian?" Jian Zizai glanced at Yi Xian. "Who am I to you?" Yi Xian quickly said, "Big sister." "You're my big sister." Jian Zizai laughed, then looked at the hunchbacked old man. "Did you hear that?" The hunchbacked old man looked at Jian Zizai. "I thought that the woman in the plain dress would appear, but she didn't." Instead, his so-called big sister came. The woman in the plain dress? Jian Zizai looked at the hunchbacked old man. "You want her to appear?" The hunchbacked old man was expressionless. "Can't I?" Haha. Jian Zizai suddenly laughed. After laughing for a moment, she looked at Yi Xian. "These enemies of yours are so funny." Yi Xian, Jian Zizai looked at the hunchbacked old man, a playful smile on the corner of his mouth. "Do you know who the woman in the plain dress is?" The hunchbacked old man said, "I don't know." Jian Zizai shook his head. "You guys are really a bunch of pigs." "No, I shouldn't insult pigs." The hunchbacked old man's expression was a bit ugly. He stared at the woman in the plain dress. "Since she won't appear, then you will die in her place." As his voice fell, he opened his palm. A talisman suddenly flew out. The next moment, boom! A monstrous pressure suddenly appeared in the air. Jian Zizai looked up, and the sky suddenly darkened. Soon, a starry sky appeared above everyone's heads. Endless starry sky. Jian Zizai looked at the hunchbacked old man, who smiled ferociously, his right hand suddenly spinning. Galaxy ashes. As his voice fell, the starry sky above everyone's heads suddenly burned, and countless starlight began to turn into little flames, shooting towards Jian Zizai below. The starry sky burned. Jian Zizai's right foot suddenly stomped lightly. Boom! Her entire body had already appeared in the starry sky, and the next moment, the starry sky began to become illusory bit by bit. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the hunchbacked old man and the others changed. At this moment, the hunchbacked old man suddenly became angry, God-slaying rope. As his voice fell, four golden lights suddenly appeared around him, and the next moment, four golden ropes shot towards Jian Zizai. At the same time, the power of countless burning starlight continuously surged towards Jian Zizai. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression immediately darkened. Would Jian Zizai be in danger? Yi Xian looked at the sky, and at this moment, Jian Zizai suddenly waved her right hand. In an instant, the power of starlight on her right disappeared without a trace, but the four golden threads did not disappear. Not only that, but the space around her was also covered by the golden threads. Layer upon layer. Jian Zizai frowned slightly, and she spread her hands. In an instant, the space around her began to tremble, and the golden threads began to slowly retreat, but soon, more golden threads appeared around her. Seeing this scene, the corners of Jian Zizai's mouth curled up slightly, interesting. As if thinking of something, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian below. They want to hold me back. Hold Jian Zizai back. Yi Xian was stunned, and soon, his expression changed, and he looked at the hunchbacked old man not far away. The hunchbacked old man stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, do you know what those golden threads are? Yi Xian shook his head, I don't. The hunchbacked old man smiled and was about to speak, but at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the sky. This thing can at most trap this woman for 15 minutes, continue talking nonsense. The hunchbacked old man didn't waste his breath when he heard this, and he looked at Yi Xian. In the next moment, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, don't all of you want this treasure? I'll give it to you. As soon as he finished speaking, the prison pagoda between his eyebrows suddenly floated out. A fifth-dimensional treasure. Seeing this fifth-dimensional treasure, the hunchbacked old man and the others immediately stopped, and their eyes were filled with greed. At this moment, the voice in the sky sounded again, idiot, he wants to stall for time. Deal with him first. Hearing this, the hunchbacked old man and the others recovered from their shock, and they looked at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian held the prison pagoda in his hand and tossed it into the sky, for you. When they saw this scene, the expressions of the hunchbacked old man and the others instantly became extremely unsightly. They didn't attack again, and they instead looked up into the sky. But right at this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly descended. The prison pagoda descended firmly in front of Yi Xian. He didn't take it. Yi Xian's expression instantly sank when he saw this. Motherfucker. He actually didn't fall for it. He'd originally wanted to divert the conflict, but now it seemed like it was hopeless. The hunchbacked old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. This person is a calamity, deal with him first. As soon as he finished speaking, he directly charged out. Behind him, Chen Biejiang and the other two charged out as well. When he saw the four of them charge at him, Yi Xian's expression instantly became ferocious. Just as he was about to fight to the death, a little girl suddenly fell in front of him. The little girl's right hand was in her trouser pocket, and her left hand was holding a stick of candied hawthorn. Her right foot was gently stomping, and she was even humming an unknown tune. The river flows however it pleases. The stars in the sky go. Where do they go? Hey-ya, chicken ah. He, Yuria. If you see injustice on the road, hammer ah. Chicken ah. Ayayaya. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 720. A little girl. When he saw the little girl, Yi Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Before coming here, he had already asked Shaolinger to call this little girl. He definitely would not fight to the death with the Xianyuan family and the other forces alone, because he could not win. What he did not expect was that this little girl was a little slow. If it were not for Jian Zizai's appearance, he would have been dead. The little girl stood in front of Yi Xian. She was dressed in a strange way, and she had a candied haw in her mouth. She looked a little wild. When they saw the little girl appear, the expressions of the hunchbacked old man and the others immediately became serious. They had not forgotten that it was this person who had killed the sword martial sect master with a single punch. They were quite afraid of this little girl. The little girl glanced at Yi Xian. "Who do you want to hit?" "Hit who?" The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. This little girl was so direct. Yi Xian pointed to the hunchbacked old man and the others not far away. "Hit them." The little girl turned to look at the hunchbacked old man. She sized him up. "Come here, I'll kill you." Yi Xian was speechless. The hunchbacked old man stared at the little girl. "Who the hell are you?" As the top force in the black-yellow great world, their intelligence was absolutely top-notch. However, they knew nothing about the people behind Yi Xian. They could not find anything. Whether it was the woman in the plain dress from before, the little girl who had just appeared, or Jian Zizai in the sky, they knew nothing. The little girl ignored the hunchbacked old man. She licked the candied haw. "Wait for me to finish eating. I'll kill you." Yi Xian was speechless. In the distance, the hunchbacked old man smiled sinisterly. "How arrogant of you." The little girl looked at the hunchbacked old man and did not speak. She stomped her little feet lightly in a very rhythmic manner. At this moment, the Heaven Gates sect master suddenly disappeared beside the hunchbacked old man. The next moment, he had strangely appeared in front of the little girl. At the same time, a dagger directly slashed at the little girl's throat. But the little girl did not dodge. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he was about to attack. However, the next scene stunned him. At the instant that the Heaven Court sect master's dagger slashed at the little girl's throat, the dagger instantly shattered into powder. At the same time, the Heaven Court sect master was blasted over 1 kilometer away. Yi Xian wasn't the only one who was stunned. Everyone else was stunned as well. In the distance, the Heaven Gates sect master looked at the little girl, his eyes filled with disbelief. "You, how is this possible?" He was unscathed. Everyone was stunned. This little girl had withstood a blow from the Heaven Gates sect leader and was actually completely unscathed. This body, Yi Xian, who was behind the little girl, was also stunned. He had always thought that his physical body was strong enough, but compared to this little girl, it was simply weak. At this moment, the little girl suddenly raised her head and looked at the 2 swords in the sky. When she saw the 2 swords, she frowned. "Sword heads? Sword head?" The hunchbacked old man stared fixedly at the little girl. "You recognize the swords of my Xianyuan clan?" The little girl glanced at the hunchbacked old man. "The Xianyuan clan? It clearly belongs to my Snowy." As soon as she finished speaking, she gestured with her right hand, and a powerful force enveloped the sword head. Moreover, the sword head actually erupted with a ray of dazzling light that slashed towards this force. The little girl frowned when she witnessed this scene. In the next moment, she suddenly vanished, and when she appeared once more, "This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page." In the air, she grabbed the hilt of the sword. The sword head trembled violently and was about to resist when the little girl raised her hand and slapped it. Slap! The sword head trembled violently, and the light it emanated was instantly obliterated. The little girl slapped the sword head again. Just like that, around 15 minutes later, the sword head started to tremble and didn't dare resist anymore. The little girl gazed at the sword head with an emotionless expression. "Do you not recognize me?" The sword head trembled as if it was saying something. The little girl frowned. "Its consciousness is dormant." When she spoke up to hear, she tossed the sword in front of Yi Xian. "Awaken its consciousness." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he asked, "How do I awaken it?" The little girl said, "Give it sword intent." Yi Xian hurriedly released his sword intent, and the sword started to madly absorb Yi Xian's sword intent. The hunchbacked old man suddenly spoke angrily. "That's the divine sword of my Xianyuan clan, you." The little girl looked at the hunchbacked old man. "How shameless. What divine sword of your clan?" "It's clearly mine." The hunchbacked old man spoke angrily. "You." the little girl suddenly punched through the air. Bang! Without any warning, the hunchbacked old man was blasted 3 kilometers away, and the sword formation and wall of sword chi in the surroundings exploded and vanished without a trace. The expressions of Chen Biejiang and the others from the sword martial school instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. This little girl's strength isn't an ordinary monstrous genius. In the distance, blood flowed from the corners of the hunchbacked old man's mouth. That punch just now had severely injured his internal organs. She's too strong. The hunchbacked old man had an extremely solemn expression on his face. This little girl's strength is truly too terrifying. She's not a match for him at all. A sword howl suddenly resounded in the distance. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. The sword in Yi Xian's hands suddenly trembled violently, and then it flew over to the little girl and trembled slightly as if it was saying something. The little girl nodded, "Long time no see." The sword trembled slightly, and then it flew around the little girl. Meanwhile, the little girl suddenly shook her head. "Bai is very far away, and you can't find him." Look, I'm a clone, and I left it here a very long time ago. At that time, I was still very weak, and the clone I left behind was a little weak as well. So, I can't take you there." The sword trembled slightly, and then it emanated a weak sword howl. The little girl was silent for a moment, and then she looked at Yi Xian. "You go with him. He should be looking for Brother Yang in the future." The sword turned to face Yi Xian, and Yi Xian hurriedly said, Yes, I'll take you to find him in the future." The little girl said, "Bye." "Bye?" Yi Xian asked, "That little guy?" The little girl nodded, "I'm invincible in the daytime." Yi Xian. The little girl said, "Just follow him, he's one of us." "One of us?" Yi Xian looked at the little girl. "I'm one of us?" The little girl nodded, "One of us." Yi Xian chuckled, "Yes, I'm one of us." The little girl clapped her hands, and then turned to look at the hunchbacked old man and the other two. "I've finished eating the tanghulu. All of you, die." As soon as her voice fell, she suddenly rushed out. Her physical body directly tore through space. Seeing this scene, the hunchbacked old man's face instantly changed. "Help me." As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly slammed his hands together. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. He clenched his fist tightly, and then he smashed it forward. At the same time, the others by his side charged out as well. 4 of them. The little girl wasn't afraid in the face of the 4 of them, and she raised her hand and smashed her fist forward. It was a very simple punch. But it was very violent. She smashed her fist forward. Rumble. The space in front of the little girl collapsed, and a powerful force instantly blasted the hunchbacked old man and the others away. Amongst them, the hunchbacked old man's body directly exploded, and only his soul remained. Moreover, the other 3 were heavily injured at this moment. The little girl's strength was too terrifying. Not far away, after the hunchbacked old man stopped, he suddenly looked up into the sky and roared furiously, "What are you waiting for?" The little girl looked up into the sky, and then she took out another tanghulu and licked it before she said, "Should I?" Amidst the clouds, the white-clothed man from the temple stared fixedly at the little girl and didn't speak. The little girl looked at the hunchbacked old man nearby. "He doesn't dare to attack. Just wait for me to finish eating this tanghulu, and then I'll kill all of you." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Why don't we kill them first before eating it?" The little girl thought for a moment, and then she passed the tanghulu to Yi Xian. "Hold it for me." Yi Xian hurriedly took it. The little girl walked towards the hunchbacked old man and the others, and she grinned, "Actually, I really want to eat someone." At this point, she seemed to have thought of something, and then she said softly, "Brother Yang isn't here. I can eat him. In any case, he doesn't know." Ha! As soon as she finished speaking, she charged forward. The hunchbacked old man and the others' expressions changed drastically. Meanwhile, the master of the heaven gates suddenly charged forward, and at the instant he charged forward, numerous afterimages appeared behind him. He was swift to the extreme. In practically the blink of an eye, he slashed his saber at the two horns on the little girl's head. Bang! In front of everyone's eyes, the Sky Gate's sect master's saber directly turned into dust. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this. Just as the Heaven Gate's sect leader was about to retreat, the little girl grabbed his throat with one hand. The master of the Heaven Gate glared at Yi Xian. Why? Why? You. Right at this moment, the little girl suddenly opened her mouth and bit down. Pfft. Under everyone's gazes, the little girl swallowed the master of the Heaven Gate's head. Everyone was speechless. Yi Xian's mind went blank. The little girl said that she wanted to eat people. She wasn't joking. She wasn't joking. She really would eat people. Yi Xian's scalp went numb from watching this. It was too bloody. Just like that, under everyone's gazes, the little girl swallowed the master of the Heaven Gate. Not far away, the hunchbacked old man and the others had started to tremble. At this moment, the little girl walked over to Yi Xian and stretched out her hand. Yi Xian hurriedly passed the tanghulu to her. The little girl took the tanghulu, licked it, and said softly, "It doesn't seem as delicious as the tanghulu." Yi Xian gulped, and then said, "You really eat people?" The little girl looked at Yi Xian. "Do you eat pork?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The little girl spread her hands. "If you can eat demon beasts, why can't demon beasts eat you?" Yi Xian was speechless. End of this chapter. Chapter 721. Hearing the little girl's words, Yi Xian could not refute it. Humans killed other weak animals for food, so why couldn't other powerful creatures eat humans? This was a question worth thinking about. At that moment, the little girl suddenly asked, "What did I eat just now?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he hurried to say, "No, you only ate candied haws. You didn't eat anything else." The little girl looked at Yi Xian and blinked. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Really?" The little girl nodded. "I'm a vegetarian." "Yes, I only eat vegetables." Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl licked the candied hawthorn in her hand, then looked at the hunchbacked old man and the other two not far away. At that moment, the expressions of the three of them had become extremely serious. No, it should be said that they were afraid. This little girl really ate people. At that moment, a shocking explosion suddenly erupted in the air. Soon, a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai patted the sleeves of her dress on her chest and said with a smile, "That formation is a little interesting." Seeing Jian Zizai, the hunchbacked old man not far away had an abnormally calm expression. Yi Xian faced the little girl. The little girl looked at Jian Zizai, and Jian Zizai also looked at the little girl. The little girl looked at Jian Zizai and nodded. "You should be quite good at fighting." Jian Zizai smiled and said, "Are you a monster?" The little girl nodded. Jian Zizai asked again, "What species?" Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl touched the horns on her head and said, "I might be a cow type." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. This little girl did not know what she was. Jian Zizai walked in front of the little girl. She glanced at the pair of horns on the little girl's head and said, "What level has your physical body reached?" What level had her physical body reached? Yi Xian and the others also looked at the little girl. This was also what they wanted to know. Under everyone's gaze, the little girl waved her hand again, and the executing heaven sword flew directly into her hand. The next moment, she held the executing heaven sword and slashed at her own head. Bang! The executing heaven sword trembled violently, emitting a trembling sound. But nothing happened to the little girl. The executing heaven sword did not even leave a mark on her head. Seeing this, everyone's expressions changed. Especially Yi Xian. He knew very well how terrifying the executing heaven sword was, but this little girl actually resisted it. He was unscathed. What kind of monster was this? The little girl flicked the executing heaven sword in her hand, then looked at Yi Xian. There is no sword in the world that can break through my defense, but there is someone who can. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before asking, will the 3 swords at the top of the tower work? The little girl shook her head. They can't. Without their master, I can smash them into pieces with one punch. Yi Xian asked again, can you defeat the owner of the sword at the top of the tower? The little girl paused for a moment, and then she said, logically speaking, I'm younger than them, much younger. Do you understand? Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. Yes, I understand. The little girl licked her candied fruit, and then she gazed at the hunchbacked old man and the others. It's time to end this. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly clenched her right fist. Bang! A powerful force suddenly condensed in her fist. At this moment, the expressions of everyone here changed drastically. Jian Zizai's eyes were also filled with a trace of astonishment. This little girl's strength was not ordinary. The hunchbacked old man raised his head and looked up into the sky. He knew that the divine hall would not come to help. Pine City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian is untalented and unvirtuous. From this moment onward, Yi Xian is removed from his position as prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. It was an old man in a black robe who spoke. A young man stood not too far behind the old man, and he had a faint smile on the corners of his mouth. It was Yi Lang. The elders of the Yi estate stood on both sides of the young man. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a little girl standing at the entrance. She was around 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the corners of her dress. Her face was sickly pale, and she seemed slightly weak. Moreover, there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. The little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan intended to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to everyone within the ancestral hall, and then she said timidly, Grand Elder, my older brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder glanced coldly at Yi Ling, this is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look directly at the Grand Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders, Dear elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped of his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. This is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position, and it's the wish of everyone. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, this subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on, you'll be my personal guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply, "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded, "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something, and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 722. The little girl looked at the blood axe. She frowned slightly, and there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. A blood axe. Under everyone's gaze, the blood axe suddenly trembled. Soon, a man appeared before everyone's eyes. The little girl sized up the man. The man's expression was cold as he glanced around. Who wants to destroy the Wu clan? Below, the Wu clan's patriarch hurriedly bowed respectfully before pointing at the little girl and Jian Zizai. Ancestor. It's them. The man looked at the little girl and Jian Zizai. When he saw the little girl, he was stunned. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically. You, the little girl blinked. Do you know me? The man's hand trembled. You. Why are you here? The little girl frowned. I don't know you. The man said in a low voice, You're the evil beast beside the ancestor. The The little girl frowned even deeper. Are you talking about Brother Yang? Brother Yang. The man's eyelids twitched. He nodded. It's the ancestor. The little girl shook her head. Brother Yang is your ancestor? How come I don't know? The man hesitated for a moment before saying, the ancestor isn't a member of the Wu clan, but he has the bloodline of an ancestor of the Wu clan. The little girl still shook her head. I don't know. The man waved his right hand, and a portrait appeared in front of the little girl. In the portrait was a man in armor. The armored man held an axe and was headless. The man looked at the little girl. This is an ancestor of the Wu clan. The little girl glanced at the portrait and said, I don't know him. The man said in a low voice, but I know you. The little girl nodded. Then do you want to fight? The man hurriedly shook his head. No, no. The little girl said, but a member of the Wu clan wants to beat up my friend. The man looked at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, he was stunned. In the next moment, he directly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He was so fast that Yi Xian couldn't even react. So powerful. Yi Xian's expression was incomparably solemn. The strength of these people was truly unfathomable. The man looked at Yi Xian. Who are you to him? Who is it? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, that man in green? The man nodded, yes. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Senior, don't you know who I am to him? The little girl, the man glanced deeply at Yi Xian, and then he turned to look at the Wu clan's patriarch. At this moment, the Wu clan's patriarch was trembling. My ancestor also knows this Yi Xian? This, the head of the Wu clan was completely blank. The man looked at the leader of the Wu clan. You idiot. Idiot. Do you want my Wu clan to be exterminated? The Wu clan's patriarch wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Ancestor, he is? The man took a deep breath and turned to look at the little girl. This is a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. The little girl spread her hands. Are we not going to fight anymore? The man hurriedly said, No, no. We're all on the same side. There's no need to fight. On the same side. Yi Xian, the man looked at the Wu clan's patriarch and said angrily, Why aren't you going back? The Wu clan's patriarch gulped. Ancestor, the man's eyes turned cold. Seeing this, the Wu clan's patriarch hurriedly turned to leave. He knew that his ancestor's killing intent had been aroused. Qingsheng, Yi clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestor, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a clan matter. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. This is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'll risk my life for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back." Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 723. The founder of the Sword Martial School. Whether it was the Sword Martial School, the Xianyuan clan, or the Wu clan, the founders of these forces could be said to be the top experts of their era. There were even some who stood at the top of their generation, invincible under the heavens. For example, the founder of the Sword Martial sect. No one knew the name of the founder of the Sword Martial School. They only knew that her fists and swords were unparalleled and she was invincible throughout the world. However, she only appeared in the black-yellow great world for a very short time. She was like a shooting star that only appeared briefly. The founder of the Sword Martial School. Everyone was looking at the white light. In the dark, the Lord of Black-Yellow stared at the white light. The Sword Martial School's ancestral master. At this moment, her expression was solemn. Because she knew more than ordinary people. It could be said that among the patriarchs of these powers, besides the deity's Templar, the patriarch of the Sword Martial sect was absolutely the strongest. The strongest. This was because the founding master of the Bound of Universe, Li Xuanyi, had once commented on this founding master of the Sword Martial School. Peerless in style, crowning the world, invincible in this generation. This was the founder of the Sword Martial School. He was the most stunning person of that era. Soon, under everyone's gazes, a woman appeared in the white light. The woman was dressed in a white robe and had her hair tied into a ponytail. There was a wine gourd hanging from her waist, and her gaze was calm. Down below, the expressions of Yi Xian and the others became incomparably solemn. Jian Zizai's eyes also carried a trace of solemnity. Danger. At this moment, she sensed danger. Yi Xian also felt the danger. The strength of the Sword Martial sect's patriarch was definitely above the Xianyuan family's patriarch and the Wu clan's patriarch. Qin Biyao of the Sword Martial sect hurriedly bowed respectfully when he saw the white-robed woman. "Greetings, martial ancestor." The white-robed woman ignored Qin Biyao and directly turned to look at Yi Xian below. Seeing this, Yi Xian's face changed. This woman still remembers me? At that moment, the white-robed woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai did not attack because she did not feel any malice. The white-robed woman just stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, the look in her eyes changed. Qin Biyao and the white-clothed old man in midair were stunned when they saw this scene. "You know Yi Xian as well?" Thinking of this, Qin Biyao's hands began to tremble. "I have a bad premonition." Yi Xian looked at the white-robed woman. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "You know me?" The white-robed woman opened her right hand, and the executing heaven sword flew into her hand. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly in excitement. It used to be its original master. The white-robed woman looked at the executing heaven sword and said softly, "Although your intelligence was erased by that little guy, your sword body was born because of me." The executing heaven sword suddenly trembled violently, and a sword cry shook the sky. Excited. Yi Xian was silent. He could sense that the executing heaven sword was very excited. The white-robed woman gently touched the executing heaven sword with her right hand and said softly, "You did very well." The executing heaven sword suddenly transformed into a streak of sword light that circled around the white-robed woman. The white-robed woman looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Qin Biyao suddenly said, "Martial ancestor." The white-robed woman looked at Qin Biyao. "What?" Qin Biyao said in a low voice, "Martial ancestor, Yi Xian is a mortal enemy of my Sword Martial School." Mortal enemy? The white-robed woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and she pointed at Yi Xian. You mean him? Qin Biejiang nodded, yes. The white-robed woman looked at Qin Biejiang. You made me show myself to kill him? Qin Biejiang felt that something was off, but he braced himself and nodded, yes. The white-robed woman suddenly shouted angrily, how dare you? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly blasted her fist forward. Bang! Everyone hadn't even reacted when Qin Biejiang was blasted 3 kilometers away. At the same time, his body shattered, and only his soul remained. Moreover, his soul was vanishing at an extremely fast speed. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. Yi Xian was stunned as well. What's going on? What's going on today? Why is it like this? The white-robed old man in the sky was stunned as well. Why are all the people I called out helping Yi Xian? Why? The most stunned one was Qin Biejiang. He hadn't expected that he would be killed by his own martial ancestor. Although he hadn't perished completely, he would soon be. Because the white-robed woman hadn't held back. Qin Biejiang looked at the white-robed woman with a puzzled expression, martial ancestor. Why? The white-robed woman looked at Qin Biejiang. No one can touch him. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand, and Qin Biejiang directly vanished without a trace. He was completely erased. In the sky, the white-robed old man's expression was extremely ugly to look at. It was extremely ugly to look at. At this moment, he wanted to die. 3 forces, 3 ancestors, all of them were standing on Yi Xian's side. He had called out 3 enemies on his side. The white-robed old man stared at Yi Xian and roared, Yi Xian, what kind of immortal monster are you? Below, Yi Xian looked somewhat innocent, actually. I'm also very confused. The white-robed old man was about to speak when the white-robed woman suddenly looked at him, damn it. As soon as her voice fell, she clenched her right hand towards the white-robed old man. Bang! The space where the white-robed old man was directly collapsed, and the white-robed old man in that space disappeared without a trace. This time, the white-robed old man was directly dead. Seeing this scene, the Xianyuan family hunchbacked old man and the others not far away had extremely ugly expressions. Fear. The sword martial sect's martial ancestor was also related to Yi Xian. Moreover, from the looks of it, it wasn't an ordinary relationship. What the hell was this Yi Xian? Why was his martial ancestor related to him? The Immortal Sword sect was also the same. In the future, who would dare to call Yi Xian martial ancestor when they fought? After the white-robed woman instantly killed the white-robed old man, she suddenly looked to the right, where the mysterious Yellow Lord was. The mysterious Yellow Lord's expression changed when she saw this. She hurriedly appeared in front of the white-robed woman and the others, and then bowed respectfully, Senior, we have no ill intentions. The white-robed woman looked at the mysterious Yellow Lord and did not speak. The mysterious Yellow Lord said in a low voice, Senior, although you've temporarily resolved the crisis of young Master Yi, the temple still exists. The temple. The white-robed woman's eyes narrowed slightly, it's the temple? The mysterious Yellow Lord looked at the white-robed woman, Senior, do you know about the temple? The white-robed woman fell silent. After a moment, she looked at Yi Xian, where is she? She? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he asked, who? The white-robed woman said, that woman. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, Senior, which woman? Can you be more specific? The white-robed woman looked at Yi Xian, don't call me Senior. Yi Xian asked, then how should I address you? The white-robed woman fell silent for a moment, and then she said, Ah Qing. Ah Qing. Yi Xian said softly, this. Miss Ah Qing, why are you helping me? Do we know each other in the past? The white-robed woman said softly, let's not dwell on this for now. Can you contact that woman? The woman who taught you the sword technique. The woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian smiled bitterly, I can't. The white-robed woman fell silent. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Senior, is this temple very powerful? The white-robed woman said, it's not something you can fight against at the moment. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, can you kill them all at once? The white-robed woman fell silent. Yi Xian asked, I can't. The white-robed woman said softly, this is just a clone. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, where's your main body? The white-robed woman looked at the horizon, and then she said softly, very far. I can't sense it. Very far. Yi Xian fell silent. Very far. What should I do? Yi Xian was worried. At this moment, Jian Zizai suddenly said, let him solve it himself. The white-robed woman looked at Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai smiled and said, don't let him be too dependent. Yi Xian hurriedly said, sister, this is not a problem of dependence. The strength of this temple is not something I can contend against at the moment. Jian Zizai said calmly, we helped you solve it. What are you going to do? Ugh, Yi Xian was speechless. Jian Zizai looked at the white-robed woman, he should grow on his own. What do you think? The white-robed woman was silent. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. He was about to speak when Jian Zizai glared at him. Yi Xian did not dare to say anything more. If he said anything at this time, he might be beaten. Jian Zizai's temper was not very good either. The white-robed woman was silent for a moment, and then she said, he should grow on his own. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face turned bitter. This was going to be a tragedy. At this time, the white-robed woman said, however, this temple is bullying the weak. Yi Xian quickly looked at the white-robed woman, and the white-robed woman looked at the mysterious yellow lord. Do you know where the temple is? The temple. The mysterious yellow lord glanced at the white-robed woman. She hesitated for a moment, and then said, the Sky Dome Realm. The white-robed woman looked up, above. The mysterious yellow lord nodded. The white-robed woman looked at Yi Xian, and she raised the sword in her hand, I'll use it for a while. If I can't come back, remember to find a way to contact that woman. After saying that, she was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Qing, is this temple very powerful? The white-robed woman looked at Yi Xian, I came into contact with them in the past. This force is not simple. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, even you can't beat them? The white-robed woman said, this is just a clone I left behind back then. This clone doesn't even have a tenth of my strength. Clone. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this time, Jian Zizai, who was not far away, suddenly said, I'll go with you. The white-robed woman glanced at Jian Zizai and shook her head, no need. Jian Zizai smiled, why? Is it because I'm weak? The white-robed woman looked at Jian Zizai, this force is not as simple as you think. There is no need to sacrifice for nothing. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian, live well. You are the only motivation for me to live. As her voice fell, she flicked her finger, and a ray of sword light entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Yi Xian asked, this is? The white-robed woman said, I have already sensed the location of one of the swords. It is not far from here. If you have time, go and get it. If that crazy woman does not arrive, combine the 4 swords into one, and you can protect yourself. After saying that, she turned into a ray of sword light and soared into the sky. Buzz! The sound of a sword tore through the sky. At this moment, everyone in the black-yellow great world heard the sound of this sword. And at the end of the distant sky, a voice resounded like thunder, who dares to offend the temple? Die! The voice fell. Boom! An explosion suddenly broke out at the end of the sky. At the same time, the entire sky was pitch black. The scene suddenly became quiet. After a while, a sword slowly fell from the sky. Executing Heaven's Sword. At this moment, the Executing Heaven's Sword was covered in cracks. P.S. There was a news article yesterday about a blogger in a reading club saying that all people were losers. F***ck, then aren't we writing about the losers among losers? Chapter 724. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned. The executing heaven's sword was damaged. Where was the white-robed woman? Yi Xian looked up at the sky. In the depths of the clouds, he could vaguely see the gate of heaven. The gate of heaven was extremely large, about 100 feet long. Above the gate of heaven, a pitch-black sword was suspended. The sword was 4 feet long and completely black. On the sword, 2 words were engraved, Abyss of Sin. In front of the gate of heaven, an old man was looking down. His eyes fell on Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man. The old man's eyes were indifferent, as if he was looking at an ant. Yi Xian retracted his gaze. He opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword fell into his palm. Looking at the cracked executing heaven sword, Yi Xian was silent. He knew that this time, he had really met his match. The executing heaven sword was cracked. He knew very well what this meant. At this moment, the old man in front of the gate of heaven suddenly pointed in the direction of Yi Xian. Chi! In an instant, a huge crack appeared in the sky. From the crack, a black light shot down like lightning. Seeing this scene, everyone's face changed greatly. Beside Yi Xian, Jian Zizai suddenly appeared in front of the black light. In the next moment, she punched out. Boom! Jian Zizai returned to her original position in an instant, and the black light also exploded. In front of the gate of heaven, the old man looked coldly at Jian Zizai, then turned around and disappeared. At this moment, Jian Zizai suddenly rushed into the sky. Soon, she directly entered the clouds. There was a moment of silence. Boom! A figure fell straight down from the clouds. This person was Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai directly landed in front of Yi Xian. Bang! The ground under everyone's feet collapsed, and everyone was directly shocked to the point of retreating. Yi Xian also retreated dozens of feet away. After stopping, he quickly looked at Jian Zizai, who was not far away. There was a trace of red at the corner of Jian Zizai's mouth. She was injured. Yi Xian's expression suddenly became serious. Jian Zizai raised her head and looked at the gate of heaven. There was a hint of seriousness in her eyes. The expressions of the heavens, Earth Sovereign and the others were extremely solemn. They knew that the divine temple was mysterious and powerful, but they didn't expect that the divine temple was strong to such an extent. At this moment, Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Not simple. Not simple. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "Let's retreat first." As he spoke, he looked at the hunchbacked old man from the Shenyuan family. The old man's expression changed, and he became extremely vigilant. Yi Xian said, "The 2 of you have seen it for yourselves. The people behind me are related to your ancestors. I won't beat around the bush. If the 2 of you are willing to follow me, I can let bygones be bygones. Forget about the past." The faces of the hunchbacked old man and the Wu clan leader turned strange. Yi Xian actually wanted them to submit? As if he knew what they were thinking, Yi Xian continued, "I don't want you to submit to me. We can work together. Of course, it's fine if the 2 of you are unwilling. We won't owe each other anything in the future. However, I personally feel that the divine temple won't let the 2 of you go." The hunchbacked old man looked at Yi Xian. "Why?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Because your ancestors are on my side." The hunchbacked old man was speechless. Yi Xian glanced at the 2 of them, and then he said, "Do the 2 of you have a choice?" The hunchbacked old man fell silent. The Wu clan leader didn't say anything as well. Both of them were speechless. Qing City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Shrine. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian will be stripped of his position as crown prince, and Yi Lang will succeed him. The person who spoke was an old man in a black robe. A young man stood not far behind the old man, and he had a faint smile on his face. This person was none other than Yi Lang. The elders of the Yi clan were standing on both sides. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the entrance. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were clutching the corners of her skirt tightly. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was also a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the Yi clan was going to strip Yi Xian of his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The old man in the black robe frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the shrine and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you strip him of his position for no reason? The Grand Elder glanced coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Go down. Yi Ling was clearly afraid and did not dare to look directly at the Grand Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the shrine. She bowed to the elders on both sides again. Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in the southern mountains. He is currently fighting for the family, and his fate is unknown. However, the family is currently using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. How dare you? The Grand Elder suddenly said angrily, It's not up to a little girl like you to say whether he is crippled or not. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly smiled and said, He should be punished 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder said coldly, Then let's punish him 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, It's unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to perform had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inheriting the position of crown prince is what everyone wants. What are you shouting for? As he said that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling across the face. Slap. A crisp sound of a slap rang out. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang sized up the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard quickly bowed, Your subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 personal guards. You will be my personal guard in the future. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply, Your subordinate is willing to go through water and tread on fire for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly, Take her away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous look in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the ancestral hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. When he saw Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was terrifyingly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Yi Ling being dragged by Zhang Mu, his face turned ferocious. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before he could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bam! Zhang Mu felt dizzy and stumbled to the ground. However, Yi did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this moment, Yi Lang, who was in the ancestral shrine, suddenly shouted angrily, "Yi Xian, he is my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. At the sight of this, Yi Lang's face turned incomparably ugly. Yi Xian, on the other hand, raised his head to look at Yi Lang and said in a sinister voice, "Your people?" As he said that, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face was instantly mangled. He kept wailing, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu, who was wailing for help. He walked to Yi Ling's side. When he saw Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled slightly. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned ferocious. In the next moment, he rushed in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Bang! Qingcheng, Yi family, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian is useless and immoral. From this moment onwards, Yi Xian will be stripped of his position as prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. The person who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi family. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly holding the corners of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's biological sister. When she heard that the family wanted to strip Yi Xian, she rushed over regardless of her illness. The old man in the black robe frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why are you crippling him for no reason?" The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Go down." Yi Ling was clearly a little afraid. She did not dare to look directly at the Grand Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall again. "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in the southern mountains. He is currently fighting for the family, and his fate is unknown. However, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position as the prince. This is truly unfair. How dare you?" The Grand Elder suddenly said angrily, "It's not up to a little girl like you to say whether he is crippled or not. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the new Prince Yi Lang suddenly smiled and said, "He should be punished 30 times as a warning to others." The Grand Elder said coldly, "Then let's punish him 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi family rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her hands tightly and said angrily, "It's unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the family. The family is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new Prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to perform had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inheriting the position of prince is what everyone wants. What are you shouting for?" As he said that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling across the face. Slap! A crisp slap rang out. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang sized up the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed and said, "Your subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the heir." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 personal guards. You will be my personal guard in the future." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through water and tread on fire for the prince. I will not hesitate to die." Yi Lang nodded slightly. Take her away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he saw something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the ancestral hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The person who came was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. When he saw Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was terrifyingly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Yi Ling being dragged by Zhang Mu, his face instantly turned sinister. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before he could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bam! Zhang Mu felt dizzy and stumbled to the ground. However, Yi did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this moment, Yi Lang, who was in the ancestral shrine, suddenly shouted angrily, Yi Xian, he is my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. At the sight of this, Yi Lang's face turned incomparably ugly. Yi Xian, on the other hand, raised his head to look at him and said in a sinister voice, your people? As he spoke, he suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face was instantly mangled. He kept wailing, Prince, save me. Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu who was wailing for help. He walked to Yi Ling's side. When he saw Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled slightly. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned sinister. In the next moment, he rushed in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Bam! Chapter 725. He could vaguely see that it was a woman. Yi Xian stared at the woman, and the image became clearer. At that moment, the ball of flames suddenly shook violently and exploded. Countless sparks flew everywhere. Everyone in the hall was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the Master of Black Yellow. What's going on? The Master of Black Yellow looked at the four black-robed men. One of the black-robed men said, Your Majesty, we can't spy on that area. The Master of Black Yellow frowned. What do you mean? The black-robed man said, that person might be in a special area, and we can't spy on that area. Yi Xian looked at Yi Xian. Do you know where she is? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. The Master of Black Yellow was silent for a moment, then looked at the black-robed man. Is there any other way? The black-robed man shook his head. That star sector is too far away from us, and its location is special. We can't spy on it. They couldn't spy on it. Yi Xian was silent. The Master of Black Yellow was silent for a moment, then looked at Yi Xian. Do you have any other ideas? Yi Xian shook his head. No. The Master of Black Yellow waved his hand gently. You may leave. The four black-robed men and old Yang left quietly. Only Yi Xian and the Master of Black Yellow were left in the hall. The Master of Black Yellow looked at Yi Xian. What do you plan to do next? Yi Xian asked, why doesn't the temple make a move now? The Master of Black Yellow said, according to my guess, it should be because they are afraid. Yi Xian frowned. Afraid? The Master of Black Yellow nodded. They are afraid of you and that Tao sect. Yi Xian asked, are they enemies? The master of black yellow nodded. They should be. However, I can't be sure. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. You have been in contact with the Dao sect. How is it? Yi Xian said, it's very mysterious. And they seem to be hiding from something. The master of mysterious yellow said softly, they must be hiding from this temple. It seems like there is something fishy going on between these two forces. You can make contact with them and try to rope them in. Yi Xian nodded. Of course. As he spoke, he looked at the Lord of Black Yellow. What's with your attitude? Until now, he still did not know what the mysterious Yellow Master's attitude was. It should be said that the other party's attitude was a little vague. The mysterious Yellow Master smiled and said, Monarch Yezi, your question hurts my heart. From the beginning until now, I have helped Monarch Yezi a lot. Yi Xian smiled. Understood. Anyway, thanks a lot. I'll have to trouble the mysterious Yellow Lord to investigate the matter regarding the Divine Hall. The Master of Mysterious Yellow nodded. You have to be careful. It's fine if the deities don't make a move. Once they do, I'm afraid they will destroy the world. Yi Xian smiled and said, Understood. Take care. After saying that, he turned and left. After Yi Xian left, Elder Yang appeared behind the Master of Mysterious Yellow and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, I'm afraid the Divine Hall has already made us enemies. The Master of Mysterious Yellow smiled and said, They want to get something, but they don't want to give anything. How can there be such a good thing in this world? Elder Yang said, So, Your Majesty has chosen this Monarch Yezi? The Master of Mysterious Yellow said softly, I can only choose him. Because the Divine Hall is powerful, if we choose them, they will not value us, nor will they talk about benefits with us. In their hearts, we should submit to them and follow their orders. So, we can only choose Yi Xian. Elder Yang nodded. Understood. The Master of Mysterious Yellow said, Now, let's see if the woman in the plain dress behind Monarch Yezi is strong enough. If she can't suppress the Divine Hall, we will all die. The woman in the plain dress. Everyone in the black-yellow great world knew that there was someone behind Yi Xian, and it was this woman in the plain dress. As for what level this woman in the plain dress was, no one knew. After Yi Xian left the black-yellow great world, he went to the Dao sect. However, when he arrived at the underground city, the city was already empty. There was not a single person. Yi Xian said softly, It can't be. After a while, Yi Xian shook his head, turned around, and left. Needless to say, the Dao sect had slipped away when they saw that things were not going well. Now, he could only rely on himself for everything. When Yi Xian returned to the northern region, he was alone in the hall. Yi Xian took out the executing heaven sword, which was now covered with cracks that looked like a spider web. Yi Xian gently stroked the executing heaven sword, and countless sword will surged into the executing heaven sword. After being strengthened by the sword will, the cracks on the executing heaven sword began to gradually repair. Looking at the executing heaven sword in his hand, Yi Xian's eyes had a trace of apology in them. I'm sorry. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly and let out a sword cry. Yi Xian said softly, Actually, my strength is not worthy of you at all. Was the executing heaven sword strong? It was definitely very, very strong. It could be said that up until now, he had not unleashed the true power of the executing heaven sword. It was not that the executing heaven sword was not good, but that his personal strength was too weak. The executing heaven sword suddenly turned into a sword light that circled around Yi Xian's body, as if it was expressing something. After a while, Yi Xian laughed and grabbed the executing heaven sword. The sword trembled, and a sword light flashed across the sword's body. Yi Xian put away the executing heaven sword and sat cross-legged on the ground. In his mind, a scene quietly appeared. A sword. A pitch-black sword. That sword was floating somewhere. After a while, Yi Xian retracted his thoughts. The white-robed woman told him to find that sword and then let him fuse 4 swords into one. He now had 3 swords. At the top of the pagoda, the white-robed woman's sword, Shaoqi's sword, and if he found that black sword, he would have 4 swords. 4 swords into one. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian took out a god-state sword and began to devour it. Raise the realm first. He was now in the Dao realm, and the Dao realm was divided into the beginning Dao realm, knowing Dao realm, proving Dao realm, mastering Dao realm, Tendo realm, and then Emperor realm. Above Emperor realm was God state, then End realm, and finally half-step Ascension realm and Ascension realm. In other words, he was still quite a distance away from Ascension realm. Fortunately, his physical body was at the peak of the End realm, so his physical body realm was not bad. Yi Xian began to devour the swords. As the swords were devoured, the aura around him became stronger and stronger. News of the battle on Cliff Mountain quickly spread throughout the black-yellow great world. Yi Xian. These 2 words once again appeared in everyone's ears. Now, Yi Xian was known as the number 1 genius of the black-yellow great world, and he was also the number 1 swordsman genius. Most importantly, Yi Xian had a backer. Now, many large forces in the black-yellow great world were secretly investigating whether their ancestors had any relationship with Yi Xian. In the main hall, Yi Xian's aura became stronger and stronger. During this time, he had already devoured 3 swords. Jian Zizai was also in the main hall. She sized up Yi Xian but did not say anything. A moment later, Jian Zizai suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in the prison pagoda. Jian Zizai went directly to the 6th floor. With a wave of her right hand, the door to the 6th floor was opened, and Jian Zizai walked in. In a corner of the 6th floor, there was a person sitting there. When she saw this person, Jian Zizai's eyes narrowed. How is this possible? A quarter of an hour later, Jian Zizai left the 6th floor. At this time, in the 1st floor, Yi Xian suddenly stood up, and a powerful aura swept out from his body. Jian Zizai appeared in front of Yi Xian. You know the realm? Yi Xian nodded. Jian Zizai nodded slightly. Right now, your state of mind and body can keep up. All you need is a process. This process can't be rushed, but it can't be too slow either. Your current strength is linked to your realm. If your realm can't keep up, your strength will be greatly reduced. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that choosing to cultivate in adversity was a wrong decision. Jian Zizai shook her head. You're wrong. The reason you can fight above your realm is largely because you cultivate in adversity. Your realm is low now. If you reach the Ascending Seal realm, your strength will definitely far surpass other Ascending Seal realm experts. No, it should be crushing. Few people in the same realm can compare to you. Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. What you need now is time. Time. Yi Xian nodded. I hope I still have time. Sister Jian, I'm going to find that sword. I'll leave Tianjiang City to you. Jian Zizai nodded. I'll guard here for you. If anything happens, you can contact me directly. Yi Xian smiled. Thank you. Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian. Be careful. Yi Xian nodded. I will. After talking with Jian Zizai for an hour, Yi Xian left the hall. Looking at the distant sky, Yi Xian was silent for a moment before quietly disappearing. He left Tianjiang City quietly. It was best to keep a low profile. He was a little worried about Tianjiang City. He was different from before. He was not alone. If he couldn't win, he could run. Now, he had to fight even if he couldn't win. Because behind him was Tianjiang City. These people from the chaotic universe who followed him here. Fortunately, Tianjiang City had Jian Zizai to suppress them. Unless the temple attacked, there shouldn't be a problem. After a while, Yi Xian came to a vast starry sky. He rode his sword towards the depths of the starry sky. His target was Black Sword. He didn't know the exact whereabouts of Black Sword. He only knew the approximate location of Dao Yi. Therefore, he couldn't guarantee that he would find Black Sword. However, he had no other choice. He couldn't contact the woman in the plain dress. Now, he could only find Black Sword and combine the 4 swords. He didn't know what would happen when the 4 swords were combined. About an hour later, Yi Xian entered a starry sky. In front of him, there was a huge black hole hundreds of thousands of miles away. Yi Xian frowned. The devouring power of the black hole was too strong. He didn't dare to get too close. The position given by the woman in the white robe was right in front of him. Inside the black hole? Yi Xian was a little worried. The devouring power of the black hole was too strong. He wasn't sure if his body could withstand it. After a moment, Yi Xian's figure trembled and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of thousands of feet away. Yi Xian was getting closer and closer to the black hole. At this moment, his body felt like it was being torn apart. Yi Xian didn't stop. He continued forward. The further he went, the stronger the tearing feeling in his body became. Yi Xian stopped. His face darkened. If he kept going forward, he would die. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to feel it. His expression changed drastically. P.S. Yesterday, I received news in my circle of friends. An author died of a heart attack in the middle of the night. He only found out 10 days later. Maybe many readers have already seen this news. Actually, I suddenly realized that many men, used to exchange their lives for money when they were young. I hope everyone cherishes their health. Your health is the most important thing. Chapter 726. Yi Xian turned around and saw a figure in black armor standing not too far away from him. He held a spear in his hand, and he seemed completely devoid of aura like a ghost. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. The divine hall? The figure in black armor didn't speak, and he just vanished abruptly. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he drew his sword and slashed. Bang! As soon as his sword descended, Yi Xian instantly retreated explosively by over 100 m. However, the spear in the figure's hand had shattered into pieces. Yi Xian glanced at his trembling arm, and his expression gradually became solemn. His opponent's strength isn't ordinary. Meanwhile, the figure in black armor suddenly vanished. Bang! A powerful force swept towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was holding the executing heaven sword with both hands. When the man in black was about 10 feet away from him, he held the sword with both hands and slashed forward. Bang! With a slash of the sword, the black-armored man was instantly sent flying. However, Yi Xian himself also retreated rapidly. The figure in black armor was just about to attack again when a voice suddenly resounded, "Stop." As soon as this voice resounded, a beautiful red-clothed woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. She seemed to be around 30 years old, and her figure was voluptuous like a ripe peach. It was extremely alluring. She gazed at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" Yi Xian was about to speak when she suddenly said, "You're Yi Xian." Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, "You know me?" She spoke indifferently, "King Yi, my Jiang clan doesn't seem to have any enmity with you, right?" The Jiang clan? Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly because he hadn't heard of the Jiang clan. She glanced at Yi Xian. "King Yi, we don't want to get involved in the matter between you and the Divine Hall." Yi Xian nodded. "I'm only here for one thing." The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian. "What is it?" Yi Xian pointed in the direction of the black hole not far away. "The Jiang clan is over there?" The beautiful woman didn't say anything. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then he pointed with his finger, and an illusory sword appeared in front of the beautiful woman. This sword was the black sword that the white-robed woman had asked him to find. Seeing this sword, the beautiful woman's eyes narrowed. "You're here for this sword?" Yi Xian nodded. "Judging from your expression, you should know the whereabouts of this sword?" The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian. This sword is my Jiang clan's treasure. The Jiang clan. Yi Xian was silent. This was going to be a little difficult to deal with. He didn't expect that the sword actually had an owner. The beautiful woman said indifferently, "Young Master Yi, please return." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Can you lend me that sword?" The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. "King Yi, are you joking?" Yi Xian spoke with a serious expression, "Just for a moment." The beautiful woman's face remained expressionless. "No." Yi Xian fell silent. The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. "King Yi, we don't want to enter into conflict with you. This sword belongs to my Jiang clan, so we'll absolutely not allow it to fall into the hands of an outsider." Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He naturally wouldn't seize it by force. It was best if he didn't make enemies right now. Moreover, the Jiang clan wasn't an ordinary power, so he would definitely be unable to defeat it by himself. Of course, he wouldn't give up just like that. That black sword was the key. The beautiful woman heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yi Xian leave. After all, even the Jiang clan was extremely fearful of Yi Xian. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded, "King Yi, please wait." Yi Xian stopped moving, and then he turned around to gaze at the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman's brows knit together tightly, and a short moment passed before she gazed at Yi Xian. "The patriarch invites you over." "The patriarch invites you over." Yi Xian nodded, "Please lead the way." The beautiful woman glanced at Yi Xian, and then she turned around and left with the black armored figure. The two of them headed towards the depths of the black hole while Yi Xian followed closely behind them. The closer they got to the black hole, the stronger the devouring energy became. At this moment, his body had started to crack apart. However, the two people before him weren't affected at all. Yi Xian walked swiftly over to the beautiful woman, and he was just about to speak when the beautiful woman suddenly said, "I've heard of King Ye's peerless strength. I presume that this little bit of devouring energy shouldn't affect King Yi at all, right?" Yi Xian was speechless. The beautiful woman glanced at Yi Xian. "King Yi actually used his body to resist this devouring energy. I truly admire you." Yi Xian spoke indifferently, "There's no enmity between us, so why are you targeting me like this?" The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to be so direct. Yi Xian continued, "If I've offended you in any way, then please speak clearly. It's all my, Yi Xian's, fault, and I'll definitely apologize. If not, then please don't target me. Otherwise, I have a bad temper, and I'm afraid I might do something bad." Right at this moment, the black armored figure by the beautiful woman's side suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, and then a powerful aura smashed down towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he drew his sword and slashed. Hiss! A ray of sword light slashed down, and the black armored figure was instantly sent flying hundreds of feet away. As soon as he stopped, the black armor he wore shattered. The black armored figure was about to attack again, but the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand was already pressed against his forehead. Yi Xian's expression was ice cold. "I didn't kill you before, but that doesn't mean I can't kill you. I'm just giving face to the Jiang clan, understand?" The black armored figure glared at Yi Xian, and he clenched his fists tightly. Clearly, he wasn't convinced. Yi Xian ignored the black armored figure, and with a wave of his right hand, the executing heaven sword returned to his hand. At this moment, the black armored figure suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. Seeing this, the beautiful woman's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly said, "King Yi, please don't." Hiss! Before she could finish speaking, the black armored figure's head was sent flying. The beautiful woman was stunned. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to directly kill him. Yi Xian's face was emotionless, and the executing heaven sword in his hand was trembling slightly. The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian and spoke angrily, "King Yi, this is the Jiang." Yi Xian suddenly gazed at her. His expression was calm, but his gaze was like a sword that caused others to shudder with fear. The beautiful woman was shocked. At this moment, she suddenly recalled what sort of person she was facing. After all, he was in existence who could kill Ascension Realm experts. Suddenly, a voice resounded. "Greetings, King Yi." The beautiful woman bowed slightly towards the distance, and then she tapped with her finger. A pitch-black stone descended in front of Yi Xian. This is a black origin stone. It can resist the devouring force of a black hole. Yi Xian put the black origin stone away, and then he walked towards the black hole. It didn't take long for him to vanish within it. The beautiful woman gazed at the corpse in front of her, and no one knew what she was thinking. There was a completely different world on the other side of the black hole. Yi Xian teleported through the black hole and arrived in a valley. There was a blue sky and white clouds above him, and he was surrounded by the sounds of birds and the fragrance of flowers. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman appeared in front of him, and she said, "King Yi, come with me." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Yi Xian followed her, and it didn't take long for them to arrive before a pavilion. The pavilion was built halfway up the mountain, and there was a statue of a man floating before it. Yi Xian glanced at the statue and asked, "Is this the ancestor of your Jiang clan?" The beautiful woman nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian sized up the statue. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman spoke abruptly, "The ancestor of my Jiang clan probably doesn't know King Yi." Yi Xian was speechless. The two of them walked around the statue and arrived at a wooden hall. There were two old men and a middle-aged man within the hall. The middle-aged man was the patriarch of the Jiang clan, Jiang Mufeng. Jiang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "King Yi is really awe-inspiring to kill people the moment he arrived in my Jiang clan." Yi Xian said, "First, he attacked me as soon as I arrived, and he wanted to kill me. Second, I gave him a chance to live, but he didn't cherish it and still attacked." Jiang Mufeng said calmly, "But King Yi could have shown mercy and done me a favor." Yi Xian looked at Jiang Mufeng and said, "Respect is mutual. If your clan respected me from the beginning, why would I need to use my sword?" Jiang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "There should be a reason why Patriarch Jiang asked me to come, right?" Jiang Mufeng waved his right hand, and the two old men and the beautiful woman beside him bowed slightly before retreating. There were only two people left in the hall. Jiang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "I heard that King Yi has a fifth-dimensional treasure." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Does your Jiang clan also want it?" Jiang Mufeng shook his head and said, "How can my Jiang clan possess such a treasure?" As he spoke, he walked in front of Yi Xian and said, "King Yi, how about we make a deal?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Tell me about it." Jiang Mufeng said, "My Jiang clan will lend you the sword, but in return, I want to see the fifth-dimensional treasure on you. How about it?" Yi Xian looked at Jiang Mufeng and said, "Just to take a look." Jiang Mufeng nodded and said, "Just to take a look." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why not?" As he spoke, he opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. When he saw the prison pagoda, Jiang Mufeng's expression turned serious. He opened his palm and Yi Xian smiled and said, "Where's the sword?" Jiang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "Why? Are you afraid that I will go back on my word?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Take the sword." Jiang Mufeng glanced at Yi Xian and opened his palm. A black box appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at the black box. Jiang Mufeng pointed at it and the box opened. Inside the box was a sword. It was the sword that the white-robed woman had asked him to find. Yi Xian retracted his gaze and looked at Jiang Mufeng. He released his hand and the prison pagoda flew into Jiang Mufeng's hand. Jiang Mufeng looked at the prison pagoda in his hand and a fiery look flashed in his eyes. Fifth-dimensional treasure. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and said, "Rumor has it that this item can allow people to go to the legendary fifth dimension. Is that true?" Yi Xian spread his hand and said, "Sword." The box in Jiang Mufeng's hand suddenly disappeared. He smiled and said, "What sword?" Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and said, "Why? Do you want to play dirty?" Jiang Mufeng smiled and said, "Yi Xian, you have killed my clansmen. I have not settled this matter with you. However, for the sake of this fifth-dimensional treasure, I can let bygones be bygones." Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Are you trying to rob me?" Jiang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "This treasure was given to me by you." Chapter 727. Yi Xian smiled. He hadn't expected that the Jiang clan would actually play tricks on him. Right at this moment, an old man appeared behind Yi Xian. The old man wore a loose robe, and his hands were hidden within his sleeves. There was a small red word inscribed on his chest, God. The Divine Hall. Yi Xian smiled, "I was wondering why. So you're colluding with the Divine Hall." Jiang Mufeng spoke indifferently, "King Yi, only death awaits those who go against the Divine Hall. If King Yi chooses to surrender." Yi Xian spoke abruptly, "We're all adults, so can you not speak so stupidly?" Jiang Mufeng gazed at Yi Xian, then "Please take care of yourself, King Yi." As soon as he finished speaking, he left silently. Yi Xian didn't stop him. The reason he was wasting his breath on Jiang Mufeng was because he wanted Jiang Mufeng to escape with the pagoda. Yi Xian turned around to look at the old man. The old man's aura was restrained, and Yi Xian couldn't see through him. However, he was absolutely not weaker than the old man in white. The old man gazed at Yi Xian, "Attack." His voice was very calm, but it carried a strand of formidable confidence. Yi Xian nodded. A moment later, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and transformed into a ray of light that flew forward. The infinite sword. Yi Xian naturally didn't dare underestimate an expert of such a level, and he immediately executed the infinite sword. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this attack, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes. He took a small step back, pressed his palms together, and then pressed them forward lightly. Bang! Yi Xian's ray of light was blocked, but the old man was pushed back repeatedly, and he moved over 1 kilometer back. When he finally stopped, Yi Xian was gone. The old man frowned slightly. He closed his eyes and swept the area with his divine sense. In an instant, he'd scanned the entire area. However, Yi Xian had vanished without a trace. The old man's frown deepened as he scanned his surroundings once more. However, he did not discover anything. How is this possible? A trace of doubt flashed through the old man's eyes. He didn't believe it and scanned the area again, but he still couldn't find Yi Xian. It was as if Yi Xian had vanished into thin air. A moment later, the old man looked at his hands. His palms had been chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. What a powerful sword technique. The old man looked around, and his eyes became more and more solemn. If Yi Xian was a little stronger, that sword would have taken his life. He couldn't be allowed to stay. The old man's expression gradually turned cold. After a short moment, as if he had thought of something, the old man turned around. In the next moment, he had already arrived at the top of a mountain, and Jiang Mufeng was nearby. At this moment, Jiang Mufeng's face was lifeless, as if something had happened. The old man walked in front of Jiang Mufeng. "Where's the fifth-dimensional treasure?" Jiang Mufeng was dumbfounded. Then, he said, "Honorable Envoy Yuan, the fifth-dimensional treasure has disappeared. It's gone." Honorable Envoy Yuan looked at Jiang Mufeng. "What kind of tricks are you playing?" Jiang Mufeng said in a deep voice, "Honorable Envoy Yuan, just now, after I obtained the treasure, I was prepared to hand it over to you after you dealt with Yi Xian. However, I didn't expect that the treasure would suddenly fly away by itself." Honorable Envoy Yuan stared at Jiang Mufeng. "Do you think this old man is an idiot?" Jiang Mufeng hurriedly said, "Honorable Envoy Yuan, I didn't lie to you. The treasure really flew away by itself. At this moment, Honorable Envoy Yuan suddenly slapped out with his palm. Bang! Caught off guard, Yuan Mufeng was sent flying. Before he could stop, a hand directly grabbed his throat. Jiang Mufeng's expression changed greatly. Honorable Envoy Yuan, Honorable Envoy Yuan's right hand immediately swelled up. Yi Xian was expressionless. Because of me? If it weren't for your Jiang clan patriarch being too greedy, would you have ended up like this? Moreover, even if you hate someone, you should hate the shrine. Why hate me? Moreover, even if you hate someone, you should hate the shrine. Why hate me? I wasn't the one who killed your Jiang clan's people. The beautiful woman stared at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian said, "Where is the sword?" The beautiful woman did not say anything. Yi Xian said, "I will ask for the last time. Where is the sword?" As he spoke, he walked in front of the beautiful woman. Your Jiang clan schemed against me. I have yet to settle this matter with you. The beautiful woman said sullenly, "It has already been taken away by that honorable envoy Yuan." Taken away? Yi Xian frowned. Taken away by the shrine? This is going to be troublesome. The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian. If you want the sword, go look for the shrine. Yi Xian did not bother speaking nonsense with this woman. He turned around and disappeared. After leaving the Jiang clan, in the starry sky, Yi Xian raised his head and looked up. The Sky Dome Realm. This shrine was in the Sky Dome Realm. Given his current strength, he could not risk going to the Sky Dome Realm. If he could not go to the Sky Dome Realm, that sword, where he stood, Yi Xian frowned deeply. He was put in a difficult position. Just at this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Soon, a voice came from in front of him. It was Yanjia's voice. After a while, Yi Xian turned his head and looked to the right. The sixth floor's Dao Law? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian disappeared. Yanjia sent a message. He had found the sixth floor's Dao Law and wanted Xiao Chen to make a trip there personally. The sixth floor's Dao Law. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared into the distant starry sky. After Yi Xian disappeared, a man appeared. This man wore white robes and held a book in his hand. He wore a scarf on his head and looked like a scholar. The scholar looked into the distance and smiled gently. Interesting. At this moment, an old man appeared beside him. This person was that honorable envoy Yuan. The scholar smiled and said, "Honorable envoy Yuan, the faction behind this person is not simple. Since you have chosen to become enemies with him, why not kill him directly?" Honorable envoy Yuan shook his head. Killing him is easy, but getting rid of the people behind him is difficult. The plain-dressed woman? The scholar looked at honorable envoy Yuan. Has Xiao Gujin not found out the origins of that plain-dressed woman? Honorable envoy Yuan shook his head. He is just a little bit off. As for that woman, we have no idea how strong she is or where she is from. The scholar asked softly, "What realm is she at?" Honorable envoy Yuan replied sullenly, "At least the unknown realm. Or, maybe even higher. Or even higher." The scholar frowned slightly. Apart from my deity hall and Taoist sect, there is really someone who has reached the unknown realm? Honorable envoy Yuan nodded. This woman's strength is not simple. Furthermore, this Yi Xian is acquainted with the ancestors of those factions. This is extremely strange. Even now, we still do not know the background of him and that plain-dressed woman. The scholar suddenly said, "Do you know the location of that plain-dressed woman?" Honorable envoy Yuan replied in a low voice, "We do not know her current location. However, she once appeared in an unknown starry sky, and she is extremely far away from us." The scholar suddenly said, "I will go meet her." Honorable envoy Yuan looked at the scholar, and the scholar smiled lightly. "I will naturally know her true strength after fighting her. Wait for my news." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of white light and vanished into the distance. P.S. I have to go out today, so I will update early. Thank you to all the friends who have been rewarding and subscribing recently. Thank you for everyone's support. I will send a red packet for everyone to draw. Thank you. Chapter 728. A battle with the plain-dressed woman. Envoy Yuan fell silent as he watched the scholar disappear into the distance. As the scholar had said, there was only one way to know the true strength of the plain-dressed woman, and that was to let their people fight her. Only by fighting with the plain-dressed woman would he be able to know her true strength. They did not have the nerve to attack Yi Xian until they knew how strong the woman in the plain dress was. Yi Xian was not scary, but the plain-dressed woman was. The temple had been treating an expert of this level seriously from the beginning. Otherwise, they would not have been hiding in the dark. This time, they had asked the Xianyuan family and the other experts to join forces to deal with Yi Xian because they wanted to use them to see the true strength of the plain-dressed woman. Unfortunately, the plain-dressed woman did not appear. Moreover, she had called out 3 enemies. The Xianyuan family, the Wu clan, the sword martial sect, and the former immortal sword sect were all on Yi Xian's side. The situation was not particularly good for the temple. Of course, it was not too bad. The plain-dressed woman was the key. If the plain-dressed woman was weak, Yi Xian and the others would not be able to withstand a single blow. Simply put, as long as the plain-dressed woman was dealt with, Yi Xian and the others would not be a problem. This time, the scholar wanted to see what level the plain-dressed woman had reached. After a moment of silence, Envoy Yuan turned and left. Bound of Universe. Inside the palace, the Lord of Universe sat cross-legged on the ground with her hands on her knees. Her eyes were slightly closed as if she was meditating. At this moment, Elder Yang walked into the palace. Elder Yang did not disturb the Lord of Universe. He stood aside. After about an hour, the Lord of Universe opened her eyes. An aura spread out from her body, but it quickly disappeared. The Lord of Universe looked at Elder Yang. Speak. Elder Yang said in a deep voice, Monarchy went to the Jiang clan, and then the top experts of the Jiang clan were all slaughtered. The Lord of Universe asked, did he do it? Elder Yang shook his head. The temple did it. The Lord of Universe said softly, it seems that the temple is really going to come out. Elder Yang nodded. The temple has been quite active recently. The Master of Black Yellow nodded slightly. Where's King Yi? Elder Yang said, he went south. Their goal is unknown. South? The Lord of Mysterious Yellow frowned slightly. After a moment, she said, continue investigating. Elder Yang nodded. He hesitated for a moment as if he wanted to say something. The Master of Mysterious Yellow asked, why? Old Yang said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, the strength of this deity temple. I'm afraid it's far beyond our expectations. If you are careless, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. The Mysterious Yellow Master laughed and said, Are you trying to say that our investment in Yi Xian is destined to fail? Old Yang was silent. The Master of Black Yellow said softly, Do you know why Yi Xian is still alive? Elder Yang looked at the Lord of Black Yellow. Your Majesty, please speak your mind. The Master of Mysterious Yellow laughed. The fact that he is still alive means that the temple is afraid of him. The stronger the deity's Templar is, the stronger the person they fear is. Old Yang nodded. That woman in the plain dress, the Master of Black Yellow narrowed her eyes. She is stronger than we thought. As she spoke, she stood up and walked to the entrance of the hall. She said softly, Now that the strength of the Xianyuan family and the other families has been damaged, only the temple and that door are left. As long as these two forces disappear, the bound of universe can regain its former glory. Old Yang said in a deep voice, then Yi Xian, the Master of Black Yellow said, He has no desire for power. Old Yang nodded. I understand. Green City, Yi family, Ancestral Temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the Crown Prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi family. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the entrance. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two little hands were tightly gripping the corners of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was a trace of timidity in her eyes. The little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral temple and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral temple. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi family rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I will not hesitate to die 10,000 times. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The Great Elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. "Pooh!" Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 729. A backer. Yi Xian felt that having a backer wasn't something to be ashamed of. Of course, he wouldn't feel proud either. Because in the end, one had to rely on oneself. But sometimes, it was still okay to hide the tiger's skin. The woman looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. The plain-dressed woman. Just this person alone could solve all the problems she mentioned. Actually, in the current fourth dimension, only the few Tao laws and the prison pagoda knew how terrifying the plain-dressed woman was. Because they were the only ones who had fought with her. She was so powerful that she could cause others to feel despair. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss, I'm also slightly surprised that this pagoda chose me. But since it chose me and recognized me as its master, then I won't run away. In any case, I can't run away. I'll say it again, if you help me, I'll restore your freedom in the name of the pagoda master. The woman looked at Yi Xian, if you really control this pagoda and all the Tao laws within it, you won't restore our freedom. Yi Xian looked at the woman, Miss Yan Jia believes in me, you believes in me. The woman fell silent. Yi Xian didn't speak as well. He picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup. As soon as the tea entered the cup, a refreshing smell instantly assailed his nostrils. The woman suddenly said, let's enter the pagoda and take a look. Yi Xian nodded. The two of them entered the prison pagoda. At this moment, Xiaoling appeared in front of Yi Xian and the woman. Xiaoling glanced at the woman and was slightly on guard. Yi Xian smiled and said, why didn't you plant a spirit tree? Xiaoling waved her hand and a huge alchemy furnace appeared in front of Yi Xian. Within the alchemy furnace, a raging fire was burning. Alchemy furnace? Yi Xian was stunned and asked, you're refining pills? Xiaoling quickly nodded and took out an ancient book. Yi Xian glanced at it and saw 3 large words on it, alchemy scripture. Yi Xian looked at Xiaolinger. Where did you get it? Xiaolinger blinked and didn't say anything. Yi Xian asked seriously, where did you get it from? Xiaolinger grinned and pointed upwards. Yi Xian asked, the 6th floor? Xiaolinger shook his head. Yi Xian's expression changed. The 8th floor? Xiao Linger nodded. The 8th floor. Yi Xian broke out in a cold sweat. The 8th floor is awake? Xiao Linger nodded and took out an ancient book. On the cover of the book were 2 large black words, Poison Scripture. The Book of Poison. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He looked at the woman beside him and asked, "Is the 8th floor a medicine master?" The woman shook her head. "He is 100,000 times more terrifying than apothecary." Then, she looked at Xiao Linger. "Can you get in touch with her?" Xiao Linger blinked and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was speechless. This little girl must have done something bad again. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, "Let's go to the 6th floor." Then, she and Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. On the 1st floor, Xiao Linger began to prepare her elixirs. She read a book and placed some ingredients in it. Soon, the alchemy furnace began to boil. At the entrance of the 6th floor, the woman led Yi Xian inside. At this moment, an invisible force suddenly blocked Yi Xian's path. Yi Xian was taken aback and said, "Senior?" There was no response. The woman suddenly said, "Wait here." Then, she walked in. The woman looked at the corner of the wall in silence. At this moment, a voice sounded. "I didn't expect to see an old friend again." The woman said softly, "With your strength, you shouldn't be like this." The demon lord smiled and said, "If you want to get something, you have to pay a price." The woman looked at the corner. "Why?" The demon lord asked, "Have you ever loved someone?" The woman was expressionless. "I am a Tao law." The demon lord smiled and said, "All things have spirits. Although you are a Tao law, how are you different from humans?" The woman was silent. The demon lord said softly, "I have observed that little guy. He is a good person. You can trust him." The woman said softly, "People change." The demon lord smiled and said, "You can live your life as you please now, but have you ever thought about it? This pagoda is rapidly recovering with him. If its intelligence completely recovers, how are you going to fight it then?" The woman shook her head. "He can't fight against it." The demon lord said, "But he is the one with the most hope. Moreover, he can't fight against it alone, but he can call for help. Why did this pagoda choose a weak person like him? Isn't it because he wants to suck up to that plain-dressed woman?" Plain-dressed woman. The woman was silent. That woman could indeed crush this broken pagoda to death. It should be said that this broken pagoda didn't dare to show any temper in front of that woman. The demon lord said again, "What are you thinking about? You don't have any other choice now, right?" The woman looked at the demon lord. "You don't hate me?" The demon lord laughed. "Why should I hate you? If I want to hate, I only hate myself for not being strong enough. If I had the strength of that plain-dressed woman and the others, why would I be suppressed here?" The woman was silent for a moment. Then, she said, "What plans do you have for the future?" The demon lord said softly, "What other plans can I have?" The woman looked in front of the demon lord and said softly, "The word love is harmful." With that, she turned and left. At the door, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the woman. "Senior?" The woman said softly, "Let's go." Yi Xian looked inside. "Senior Demon Lord, you are awake?" The Demon Lord smiled. "I am awake." Yi Xian grinned. "Senior, can you leave the mountain?" The Demon Lord laughed. "Kid, do you want to learn a very powerful fiend technique?" "Very powerful?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "What fiend technique?" The Demon Lord said, "I'll look for you in 2 hours." Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. "All right." Yi Xian and the woman returned to the 1st level. Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Senior," the woman suddenly said, "Lian Qian, that's my name." Yi Xian nodded. "Miss Lian Qian, have you thought it through?" Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian. "According to what I know, you have already grasped the major Tao law, space Tao law, and dream Tao law. In addition to A, Yu and Yen Jia, you have a total of 5 Tao laws. Yi Xian nodded. Lian Xian said, 5 Tao laws. If you include me and this Xiao Ta's current condition, you can activate 2 functions of this pagoda. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what 2 functions? Lian Xian said, first, in the name of the pagoda, it can imprison all things in the world. This pagoda has an imprisonment technique. In theory, as long as you are chosen, you will be imprisoned. Moreover, this imprisonment technique contains the laws of the 5th dimension. You people from the 4th dimension can't break it. Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and added, except for a few people. At this moment, she recalled the scene in the starry sky back then. This pagoda had used this technique on the 3 swordsmen. Unfortunately, their heads had exploded. Yi Xian said, I've used this technique before. However, every time I used this technique against a powerful enemy, my body would be hollowed out. Lian Xian said, that's normal because you're too weak. Moreover, you didn't use the right method. Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. The right method? Lian Xian flicked her finger and a white light entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Soon, a string of information appeared in Yi Xian's mind. It was a mnemonic chant. Lian Xian said, this is the mnemonic chant for the imprisonment technique. With your current strength and this pagoda's willingness to help you, there's no one you can't imprison unless it's a top powerhouse. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this top powerhouse. Can you be more specific? For example, what level of powerhouse can I imprison now? Lian Xian shook her head. I don't know. In any case, you'll know when you encounter a strong enemy. Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Xian continued, however, this imprisonment technique consumes a lot of energy. You have to take it easy. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Miss Lian Xian, what is this second function you mentioned? Lian Xian said softly, come with me. Saying that, she led Yi Xian out of the pagoda. Outside the pagoda, she looked at the top of the pagoda door. There were 2 pairs of couplets. On the left side, imprison the heavens, imprison the earth, imprison all gods and demons. On the right side, imprison the Tao, imprison life, imprison all human immortals. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this is? Lian Xian said, do you know what this is? Yi Xian shook his head. Lian Xian said softly, this is the 6 Paths Mantra, Master's Mantra. Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian. Master's Mantra? Lian Xian nodded. These 6 Paths Mantra. You can use the first 2 now. Yi Xian looked at the 2 pairs of couplets. How do I use them? Lian Xian suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She pointed a finger at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! A powerful force suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. Countless information suddenly surged into Yi Xian's mind. Just like that, about half an hour later, Lian Xian withdrew her hand. Lian Xian looked at Yi Xian. This Master's 6 Paths Mantra can be said to be the pinnacle of the heaven and earth laws of your 4-dimensional universe. Once you use these 6 Paths Mantra, you will definitely be targeted by your 4-dimensional universe's Tendo. Yi Xian said in a low voice, how many Tendo are there in the 4-dimensional universe? Lian Xian said softly, many. However, the strongest should be the one from your black-yellow great world. I've felt it before. The other party is unfathomable. It's definitely not something you can contend against. Yi Xian nodded. Then, he looked at the 6 Paths Mantra. Prison heaven. Prison earth. He could use these 2 mantras now. Lian Xian had already taught him how to use them. Yi Xian said, can I try? Lian Xian shook her head. It's best not to. Only use it when you're undefeatable. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Saying this, he looked at Lian Xian. Miss Lian, what Tao law are you? Lian Xian said. I'm not something you can control right now. Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Xian said, the current you must quickly increase your realm. Once your realm increases, coupled with the fact that you've recultivated in adversity, your strength will be much stronger than you can imagine. Yi Xian nodded. I will try my best to increase my realm. Lian Xian nodded slightly. Go to the 6th floor. He doesn't have much time left. Time. Yi Xian looked at Lian Xian in shock. Doesn't have much time left? What does that mean? P.S. Someone asked me how many words this book will have. How many do you think this book will have? How many do you hope to write? I will listen to your opinions seriously. Chapter 730. Lian Xian said lightly, let's go and see. Yi Xian did not ask anything and went directly to the entrance of the 6th floor. Come in. A voice suddenly sounded from the 6th floor. Yi Xian walked in. The space on the 6th floor was not big, but there were some mysterious black runes on the surrounding walls. These runes were connected from end to end, and they were densely packed together. Moreover, they were exuding a strange and mysterious power. Yi Xian looked at a corner not far away. When he saw the Demon Lord, he was stunned. The Demon Lord had a head full of white hair. Not only that, his entire face was covered with wrinkles, and he looked incomparably old. Not only that, the Demon Lord's aura was extremely weak, so weak that it was almost non-existent. This was completely different from the portrait he saw in the Demon Gate. And in front of the Demon Lord, there was an ice coffin. In the coffin, there was a woman lying. The Demon Lord suddenly laughed and said, Haha, is it different from what you imagined? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, the Demon Lord said softly, come and have a chat. Yi Xian walked in front of the Demon Lord and looked at the old Demon Lord in front of him. For a moment, his emotions were incomparably complicated. The Demon Lord smiled slightly, I'm sorry, it's not that I don't want to help, but that I am powerless. Yi Xian asked, is it because of this tower? The Demon Lord shook his head, not really. Yi Xian looked at the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord looked at the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, do you remember the story of me and a woman that I told you before? Yi Xian nodded, I remember. The Demon Lord smiled and said, she is that woman. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the ice coffin in front of him. The woman's appearance could not be said to be very beautiful, but it was not bad either. The Demon Lord smiled and said, back then, I was just a scholar. For me, my biggest wish was to enter the imperial examinations. Unfortunately, my family was poor, and I could not even afford to eat, let alone study. At this point, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, she and I can be said to be childhood sweethearts. At that time, due to my family's circumstances, her parents did not approve of our relationship. However, that did not stop us. In order to pay for my education, she worked several jobs a day. For a whole 5 years, she never spent a single copper coin on herself. At this point, the Demon Lord seemed to have thought of something. Tears suddenly flowed from his eyes. That day, I went to the capital to take the exam. I told her that when I passed the exam, I would marry her. She smiled and didn't say anything. The Demon Lord gently stroked the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, 3 months later, I won the top rank, but when I returned, she was already dead. Dead? Yi Xian was stunned. Why? The Demon Lord laughed out loud, laughing a little crazily. This matter is as melodramatic as what is written in chivalrous novels. After I left, her parents forced her to marry someone else. She refused, so her parents forced her. In the end, she chose to commit suicide. At this point, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him with an incomparably painful expression. It was me who harmed you. What did I do for you to do this for me? What did I do to deserve this? Yi Xian was silent, his emotions were complicated. The Demon Lord suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Do you know what is the most painful thing for a man in this world? It is meeting the right person when you have no ability, and what is more painful is that when you have the ability, that person is no longer there. Yi Xian was silent. Although he did not have the same experience as the demon lord, he could understand what he was saying. If a man met the right person when he had no ability, how helpless would he be? However, if that person was no longer around when he had the ability to do so, at this time, the demon lord said softly, "She is no longer there. Even if I am a first-rank official, what is the point?" At that moment, my life's beliefs collapsed. In the end, I chose to abandon the arts and go to the military. Fortunately, I was quite lucky and obtained some opportunities. And for the rest of my life, I wandered around with her. Later, I heard that entering the fifth dimension can reverse life and death. Thus, I searched everywhere for a way to enter the fifth dimension. Finally, I found this tower. Unfortunately, I underestimated the strength of this tower. Hearing this, Yi Xian finally understood why the demon lord was imprisoned. So he found this world prison tower himself. Yi Xian asked, "Senior, according to reason, with your strength, this kind of situation should not have happened." The demon lord said softly, "That year, I used some methods to ask someone to gather her soul and spirit. With this soul and spirit, there is a possibility of her resurrection. After I was imprisoned in this tower, I could barely resist the power of this tower, but she could not. Thus, all these years, I have been using my own strength to protect her. But the result is that I have overused my strength, and my lifespan has been consumed too quickly." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "If I had met you earlier, perhaps this would not have happened." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I remember that the plain-dressed woman was in this tower. Why didn't Senior ask her for help?" The demon lord shook his head and smiled. "Little brat, you are so smart, why can't you understand now?" Yi Xian looked at the demon lord. "Senior, what do you mean?" The demon lord smiled. "You think the plain-dressed woman is easy to talk to?" Yi Xian nodded. "She is easy to talk to." The demon lord shook his head. "Only to you. In her eyes, except for you, everyone else is an ant." "No, except for you, there is no one else in her eyes." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "She is very strong, so strong that even I do not know how strong she is. I do not know why she cares so much about you, but there must be a reason. You have to live on, for your sister, for your other lovers, and for her. Otherwise, if you die here, with that woman's strength and temper, I am afraid she will destroy the entire fourth dimension." The plain-dressed woman. As he said this, the demon lord's eyes became very serious. In the past, he was also a person at the peak, but after meeting the plain-dressed woman, he realized how weak he was. Weak. In front of the plain-dressed woman, this was the first time he felt so weak. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, I will definitely live well. But for now, let's not talk about me. Follow me out of the tower." "We." The demon lord shook his head. "It's too late." Yi Xian looked at the demon lord. The demon lord said softly, "My lifespan has come to an end. Even if the plain-dressed woman is here, it will be useless. After all, even she cannot reverse life and death. Life and death cannot be reversed." As he said this, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him. "I asked you to come here because I need your help with something." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, please speak." The devil lord said softly, "I can no longer continue to protect her, let alone resurrect her. You, on the other hand, are the person most likely to go to the fifth dimension. If she follows you, she will most likely be resurrected." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Take her to the fifth dimension. If the fifth dimension can resurrect her, please do so. However, don't tell her about me." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" The demon lord smiled and said, "It's good that she's alive." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, even if you resurrect her, you're no longer here. the demon lord said softly. When she was with me, she lived a hard life. Those days were really too hard. She has never been happy in her life. I want her to live a good life, live a happy life. Yi Xian wanted to say something but hesitated. The demonic lord laughed. I know what you want to say. If she reincarnates, she might have a good life. However, she can no longer reincarnate. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The demon lord said softly, her obsession is too deep. At that time, it was because of her obsession that I protected her soul and spirit at all costs. As he spoke, he paused for a moment before continuing. You are the person most likely to enter the fifth dimension. With her by your side, there is a high chance of her resurrection in the future. If you can resurrect her, don't tell her about me. Because, I am no longer the scholar from back then. Yi Xian was silent for a moment before saying, if I go to the fifth dimension in the future, I will do my best to help Senior fulfill this wish. The demon lord laughed. That's enough. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a black key appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was puzzled. Senior, this is? The demon lord said softly, do you still remember the tomb I asked you to bring out from the demon sect? Yi Xian nodded. The demon lord looked at Yi Xian. Inside, is my last inheritance. Apart from that, there is something else I left for you. As he spoke, he suddenly stood up and walked in front of Yi Xian. One last thing for me. Yi Xian asked. Senior, speak. The demon lord looked at Yi Xian. After I leave, use the secret technique in the tomb to refine my body into a demon corpse. My body has already broken through this world. If it is refined into a demon corpse, Yi Xian suddenly said. Senior, the demon lord interrupted Yi Xian. Let me finish. If my body is refined into a demon corpse, it will surpass the so-called ascending seal realm experts. It should be at the unknown realm. Apart from that, as long as you continue to cultivate according to the secret technique, my demon corpse. No, it should be an emperor corpse, the emperor of corpses. It is the highest level demon corpse in the demon race. As long as you continue to cultivate the secret technique, my emperor corpse can continue to cultivate and become stronger. As he spoke, he suddenly pressed his right hand on Yi Xian's shoulder. I am not doing this for you. If you resurrect her in the future, just let this demon corpse follow her secretly. When I was alive, I wanted to protect her. I hope that after I die, I can protect her. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, the demon lord shook his head. I don't have time. As he spoke, he glanced at the woman in the coffin and smiled faintly. This farewell is eternal. If you resurrect, you must live well for yourself. You must. As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. I will do one last thing for you. As he spoke, his soul suddenly flew out of his body. In the next moment, his soul left the world prison pagoda and soared into the clouds. Sky Dome Realm, in front of the heavenly gate of the temple, a white-robed scholar's soul looked at the heavenly gate and smiled faintly. I am Xue Hubei. I request a battle. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.